Hello everyone, welcome to Black Fog, your guide for drifting off. I know you listen to help you fall asleep, so like and subscribe to Black Fog before we start. Where are you from and what's your time? Now get comfortable and relax. I'm sitting on a sofa in a cramped, messy room. The carpet is faded and stained, the wallpaper peeling, and spots of mold speckle the ceiling. Everything about this old house screams disrepair. Next to me on the sofa, an old man with sagging, papery skin sits staring at an empty chair in the corner. A younger man, somewhere in his 30s, in a suit with the slick haircut and white smile of a dentist, or maybe a realtor, flashes his pearly whites at the old man and says, "Hello, sir. My name is Nathan. I'm a spiritual medium. Your family reached out to me and asked for my services. Can you tell me some of what you've been experiencing?" "She's there," growls the old man, still staring at the empty chair in the corner. "Who's there?" Nathan the medium glances at the chair, back to the old man. "Who is it you see sitting in that chair?" He sniffs, wrinkles up his mouth in a frown. "To know her name. For the record, I don't believe in any of this stuff. I am here because I don't believe. I'm also recording this entire interaction." The old man, the medium, the invisible woman in the chair in the corner. I make sure to get the chair. Lots of footage of it. I am tempted to get up and go sit in it, but that would ruin this whole charade. Wouldn't it? Anyway, I just keep filming. Nathan, the smarmy medium, who should be a realtor, looked confused when he first looked at the empty chair, but is now playing along, full woo-woo psychic mode, saying stuff like, "To the woman in the chair, can I ask what you are doing here? What is it you would like to communicate?" Silence, and Nathan asks the old man, "Do you see any change in her?" The old man shakes his head. "She's just sitting there. A few minutes more of a lot of nothing." The medium decides to cast a blessing on the room to help put her spirit to rest. And then the old man sits up straight. His eyes go big. He says, "She's getting up." Then, "She's laughing. She's cursing at us." Then he starts whimpering. "She's coming closer. She's coming. She's coming. Stop her." He starts screaming, and the medium leaps up, chanting words of a prayer in what is probably Google translated Latin. He waves a hunk of burning sage and sprinkles salt, while the old man screams. I get the whole thing on my phone. The screaming, the sage, the sweat on Nathan, the medium's brow as he shouts with increasing ferocity over the old man's howls, snarling at the empty chair. And when the moment is right, I yell, "Cut!" The old man stops screaming. His face breaks into a grin as he turns to me. "How was that, Max?" "Brilliant. Pete, you were brilliant," I say, angling my phone toward myself and also speaking to the cameras we have set up to catch the psychic at work. I speak to my future audience, you all who should subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Pete, an actor. I'm Max, host of Debauchery and Debunkery, where we used to take a shot for each lie, but quickly realized we get drunk way too fast. Now, we just debunk stuff and get drunk later while laughing about it. The only person who is not an actor here is Nathan the medium, who, as you can see, quickly began speaking to an empty chair. "Nathan, you stated several times that you could sense the presence in the chair. What do you have to say now that you know Pete here is an actor?" Nathan has lost his charm. He stammers, red-faced, furious at having been set up, looking between me and Pete and the chair as if unsure which of us is the most to blame for his predicament. He insists his powers are genuine and babbles that there is a spiritual energy in the chair, while I go on to remark about how the chair itself is from Target. We bought it this morning. So was there spiritual energy at the department store before we brought it in? He says it must be with the house, then. I tell him how the house itself is a set. It's actually my house, and I live here, and this entry room doesn't usually look like this. We made it grubbier for effect. Though, I add, I guess you're right, there's not the greatest vibes. Feng Shui has always been a little off in here, and I do need to replace the carpet. The stains are real. The mold spots on the ceiling are fake. You get the idea. Call me Max, short for Maxine or Maximilian, depending on my mood. I'm currently Nathan, the medium's worst nightmare. What you are doing is entrapment, he snarls, his ruddy red face on the verge of tears. Oh, his business is gonna take a hit, all right. He keeps barking at me. You act so sanctimonious, but this bullshit is hurting people. You're hurting people by dismissing their beliefs, disrespecting the spiritual. I laugh at him. I'd say that's exactly what you're doing by taking advantage of people, just like you tried with Pete here. I bet you go into schools and debunk Santa Claus to the little kids. How telling that you compare what you do to lying to children. So you know you're lying, you just think it's okay because they're feel-good lies. You know what? Make fun all you want. But this stuff is real. You're a fool to mess with it. He turns and storms out. My last shot of him is both middle fingers held up. His dramatic exit is marred almost immediately by his return moments later. His face now blank as thrusts a business card into my hand. For skeptics, he says, call her, and she'll make you believe. Thanks for the tip, Nathan. Probably won't, though. It usually doesn't work when people know ahead of time. Call her, she will make you believe, he repeats again, before turning on his heel and striding out. I look at the card. It just says make believe on one side, and on the other is an eye and a number. The eye has a nifty effect where it appears to always be looking at you. The card is matte black with simple lettering. I tuck it in my pocket. A few days later, Nathan the medium contacts me via text. The episode has already aired. I'm sure Nathan is pissed about it. No doubt he's getting a lot of emails and calls. He's getting roasted in the comments. So his messaging me, it's not surprising. Probably to beg me to remove it, offer to bribe me. I've had all kinds of things. His message, when I open it, surprises me. Forget what I said about the card. Just throw it away, please. Now, I've always been a contrarian. Had forgotten about the card until that moment. But of course, after his request, I go digging it up. The matte black, the eye, the words, make believe, and the number to call. I call it out of curiosity, making sure to record the call so I'll have material later for an episode if this turns into anything. There's no ringing, just a voice, connecting almost immediately. The address is redacted. Come if you want to believe. Corny, probably not worth the effort of a debunk. But the address isn't too far from my sister's house, and I have to visit her anyway to help her with a few things and talk about my brother-in-law. He's battling cancer. I make a note about it, and the next day, before I head over to see my sister, I swing by the address. Takes a while to find. A small psychic reading shop, more of a nook really, tucked between a bakery and a bookstore. You have to go down a set of stairs to even find the door. And the room is so small it feels like stepping into a janitor's closet. The woman inside is neither old nor young. She's somewhere between 30 and 50, an unremarkable bird of a woman with beady dark eyes and hair like a crow's wings, glossy black with a bluish sheen. Must be dyed. She's sitting in a chair in the corner in a long black gown, stiff as a doll that's been posed. She has only one eye, which follows me as I step in and sit down in the chair opposite her. The other eye is shrouded in shadow. Also, the lights in here are very low. It's a nice effect, hokey but visually arresting. Props to her for atmosphere, minus a few points for being so cliché. Hello, Max, says the woman. So Nathan obviously did give her the heads up. So much for debunking. Even so, I ask her if I can record. She cackles a little and motions for me to go ahead. So I take out my phone and start recording us both. Though I don't have much hope for anything from this given she's already been prepped for me by Nathan. Still, why not? I clear my throat and say, I'm told you can make anyone believe? Sure, she agrees. Okay, make me believe. Her head cocks, raven-like, and she examines me. Her eye drifts to the camera. Is this really what you want, Max? To be made to believe? Me and my viewers? And your viewers. Again, that throaty chuckle. How nice. All right then, Max, the debunker. I'll make a bargain with you. In 5 days, if I've made you believe, you publicly announce your belief before you end yourself and your channel. If you still don't believe in 5 days, nothing happens to you. The sheer gall of this lunatic. I can't help smiling. End myself and my channel? I echo. That's the worst bargain I've ever heard. Why would I agree to that? Because you don't believe you won't believe, and you're an arrogant shit who wants clicks, and making this bargain will give them to you. She makes, actually, a very good point. Also, she's right. I absolutely do not believe. I say as much to my camera, and then say, okay, crazy lady. Fine, I accept your bargain, but just recording this to note that I have no plans to commit suicide, and if I appear to do so and this lady has murdered me, I expect her to be arrested. She just looks at me with that flat black eye. So how are you going to make me believe? Ask. Tell me the names of 3 people. She grunts. Kenji. I say. My brother-in-law. He dies on Friday, she says. Loses his battle with cancer. My condolences. Wow. Okay. Obviously you did your research. It's called a hot reading, when a purported psychic will look up information about a subject before the reading and then recite facts about them that seem astonishing to the audience. Nathan told her I was coming, so she obviously looked up my brother-in-law and his condition. My brother-in-law could pass at any time. Friday is very specific, but it's not a bad gamble. I find it in poor taste she throws out his death so casually, though wagering her whole charade on his ill health. That one's too easy, she says, as if agreeing with my thoughts. Who else? Sarah, my sister, who is going through it right now with Kenji's illness. She shakes her head. Nothing much happens to her in the next 5 days except for grieving her husband. Name someone else. What? No, you said I can name anybody. I named Sarah. You can't make a prediction for her. She sighs and rolls her eyes. It's your episode, Max. There are plenty of more interesting options. But fine. Your sister Sarah forgets a bag of groceries and has to go back for it. Inside are 2 apples, some herbal medicine your brother-in-law requested that she'll never get a chance to deliver to him, and chocolates for you. This is all so specific. Already, I'm thinking of how it could be staged. Could this woman bribe one of the store workers at the co-op my sister shops at? Or maybe this make-believe woman has got a bug in her ear now. Someone is whispering stuff to her, and they've been watching Sarah and the shopping has already happened. I'm still considering how elaborate this might be, or if she's just doing what most of these scammers do, lie. The woman says, I'll pick the 3rd person because you're about to say Mateo, and yes, his wife is cheating on him. He'll say it's too easy for me to have guessed. You think I have an accomplice listening and feeding me clues. So instead, let's pick Pete. In 3 days, he has a heart attack from seeing her. Seeing who? The woman in the chair. Her lips curve in a ghastly smile. Pete the actor? There's no woman in any chair. I paid him to make her up. He'll call you in 3 days and he'll tell you he's been seeing her. He'll beg you to make her go away. He'll warn you. He'll plead. He's an actor. I snap. Did you hire him? He'll say that he knew you'd say that. He'll beg you to believe him. But you won't. Well, this last one sounds easy enough to stage anyway. Though if they can make the stuff happen with my sister, I'll be both really impressed and probably filing a lawsuit for stalking. As for my brother-in-law, it's disgusting they'd even talk about him that way. Oh, Max, she says as I am leaving. Take my card. I love referrals. Refer me to someone else and maybe I'll make them believe in your place. Whatever. I growl and step out of the place, ascending the stairs into the bright sun. She makes my skin crawl, not because she's connected to the occult, but because she's a charlatan who lies without any sense of moral compunction, a parasite feeding on people's superstitions. I've made it my career to expose people like her. These kinds of scammers are the reason my father ended up losing so much money, destitute and desperately believing that the woman, if she even was a woman, catfishing him was in love with him. He believed she was planning to elope with him until he succumbed to COVID during the pandemic. Exposing the lies can't bring him back or undo the harm that was caused to our family, but it might prevent someone else from falling for a similar scheme. When I get home, I review the footage of my encounter with the make-believe woman and decide that next week I'll splice it with some footage of all her predictions not coming true. It'll make a decent short reel, I guess, though not dissimilar from other reels where I've exposed frauds. I save the footage and forget about it. 2 days later, on Friday, my brother-in-law's passing coincides with the first prediction. But his death was already foretold by the doctors, and I dismiss the coincidence. For the rest of the day, I am talking to family. I console my sister, Sarah. I spend the night and check in on her every few hours. She has barely stopped crying and hasn't eaten anything. The next day, I'm still trying to console her when my phone rings. It's from an unsaved number. I don't pick up, but it rings, and she tells me through tears it's fine, to please go and answer it. So I do. It is Pete the actor. "Max," rasps Pete. "Max, thank God. She said she'll count you as a referral. You have to make her go away." "Who?" I ask. Annoyance like an ice pick in my brain because I already know who. Already suspect. "The woman," he bursts, all but sobbing. "The one in the chair. I can't believe it. This make-believe lady actually did it. She actually reached out to Pete, paid him whatever she paid him, not much probably. He's an amateur actor we found on Instagram. Honestly, one of the reasons we hired him is because he came cheap. And now he's turned his shtick on me." I sighed. Yeah, very funny. "Listen, I know who hired you." "She said you'd say that," he bursts. "She said you wouldn't believe me, but you have to. Max, you have TO. Okay, look, this is inappropriate. My brother-in-law just died. I need to take care of family matters. You have to believe. Max, you're the only one who can save me. You have to believe before tonight. Call her and tell her you believe or I'll." I hang up the phone, frustrated, and then I silence it as it immediately rings again. My sister looks up from her chair, eyes red, perplexed. "Max?" she asks. "Who was?" "Nobody. Just an actor I worked with on a gig. Nothing to worry about." I sigh, looking at my silenced phone. Still ringing. There are also pictures coming through via text and messages. Pictures from the photo shoot. All of the empty chair. "Can't you see her?" He keeps texting. More empty chair pictures. The man is dedicated, I'll give him that. He's a much better actor than I initially gave him credit. Probably should have paid him more. I block his number and forget about him. Forget about him, that is, until the next day. I'm helping my sister to put things away around the house. The place is a mess, and everything reminds her of Kenji. As I unpack a tote bag on the counter, I pull out a couple of chocolate bars. I ask if I can have one, and she calls from her place listless on the couch. "Yeah, I got those for you." "Oh, really? Thank you." "Sure." I pull a box of an herbal supplement out. My heart thumps in my chest. This is only a coincidence, I think. I clear my throat and call, "What do you want me to do with this herbal concoction?" "Huh. Supplements for..." "Looks like it helps with digestion and gut health." "Oh, She goes very quiet and then says, "I got that for Kenji." I dunno." "Oh, I don't want to ask. I don't want to, and I loathe the butterflies in my stomach. The way my throat is dry and constricted as I ask her, "Did you forget the bag?" "Huh. The herbal medicine. When you were out shopping for him, did you leave the bag?" Yeah, actually." She wipes tears from her eyes. "I've just been so out of it." "How did you know I left it?" I don't answer. My heart is hammering now as I go to my phone. Search for Pete's number. Try to call, but there is no answer. I turn to my sister. "Maybe the cashier kept the bag by accident," I say. "Maybe they set it behind the counter, so you didn't notice when you walked away." She's too distraught over Kenji to engage with me. Doesn't understand why I care about the bag. Could have been tucked behind the counter. She echoes. I cling to that thought. The make-believe woman. The make-believe woman bribed the cashier to hide the bag, and then to put items in it that my sister would normally buy. How else would the make-believe woman have known exactly what items would be in there? These scammers, I tell you, blood-sucking. It's insane the lengths they go to. But just in case I retreat to the spare room, open my laptop, and check the footage of my recording with the make-believe woman. Check the date. She told me I had 5 days. Tomorrow will be 5. I have time. I have time. I repeat to myself, wondering why I'm being so uncharacteristically irrational when none of this is real. Paid Pete. I know he's acting. Why the fuck hasn't he called back? I call again. No answer. I go to YouTube and pull up the debauchery and debunkery video I released about Nathan the phony medium. My heart settles as I watch it. The medium talking about his craft. This fucking fraudster. He goes on about establishing a psychic connection and how time is all wibbly-wobbly. Pretty sure he cribbed that from some sci-fi show. And as a consequence, he can see snippets from the future. It's all nonsense. I feel the comfort of the familiar, my skepticism sliding back into place. The camera shots of my house, the staged front room, the peeling wallpaper and everything. And there's Pete, sitting on the sofa, pretending. I can't wait for him to get to the part where I call, "Cut!" And he reveals he's acting the whole time. That's what I need to see to feel better. "Hello, sir. My name is Nathan," says Nathan on screen, introducing himself to Pete. "I'm a spiritual medium. Your family reached out to me and asked for my services. Can you tell me some of what you've been experiencing?" "She's there," says Pete. "Who's there?" asks Nathan the medium, while Pete the actor keeps staring and says he doesn't know her name. And then my camera zooming in on the chair. And oh, fuck me. No! I freeze the frame. No, what the fuck? No, she's there, staring out at me from the screen, staring through the screen, right at the camera. The woman from the psychic reading shop. The video proceeds as normal, the same as before, exactly as we recorded. My blood is pumping so loud I can barely hear myself think. My pulse raging, drowning out the dialogue in the video as the medium leans forward and asks what the woman is doing now. Pete says she's just sitting there. The camera pans back to the empty chair, but it's not empty, the woman is sitting in it. The camera returns to Nathan the medium as he gets up and begins performing a blessing on the room, until suddenly Pete sits up straight on the sofa and announces, "She's getting up." She's laughing. My throat constricts. My heart sledgehammers my ribs so hard I think I might go into cardiac arrest. The phone camera remains trained on Pete, on his hammy acting. Only now, instead of looking hammy, he looks genuinely terrified. He really is a better actor than I gave him credit. I hear my own voice chuckling under my breath on the recording, trying not to giggle at what I evidently thought was a great performance by our actor. And then finally, my phone pans back to the chair. I scream aloud, in my room by myself, and jerk back from my laptop. The woman is standing, lurching toward the camera. Toward me. She's coming closer. Pete's voice screams on the recording. I'm cowering on the floor, gasping, as the woman steps nearer. Nearer to the camera, her face swallowing the screen. "Cut!" shouts my voice. Then everything is back to normal. The woman on the video is gone. There's only Nathan, red-faced and ashamed as Pete, and I tease him. I hear my own arrogant voice. I'm Max, host of Debauchery and Debunkery, where we used to take a shot for each lie, but quickly realized we get drunk way too fast. I slam my hand on the laptop to shut it, but then something occurs to me. If the woman was really there, if I wasn't seeing things, others must have noticed her too. I pull open the laptop again and skim the YouTube comments. All ordinary, and my heartbeat settles until I scroll to the most recent comments. Specifically, there's a bunch left by the user Pete Hamzatup. It's the handle for our actor, and he has commented over and over, "Pete Hamzatup, I believe." Pete hams it up. I believe. 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 I check Pete's Instagram account, the one we hired him from. His account is gone. Deleted. I call Pete, and while the phone rings, Moksh. The door bursts open, and my sister says, Max, everything okay? She's come because she heard me screaming over the video. Can you see her? I ask, trying not to hyperventilate as I turn my laptop toward her, rewinding the video to just before the cut. Can you see anyone in the chair? What? No, it's just an empty chair. Max, what's going on? But I push past her without answering. I need to get home, need to get to that staged front room. Max. My sister shouts as I slam the door behind me. I try calling Pete again as I pull out of the driveway. His phone just keeps ringing. I call and call, then drop the phone, swearing as I nearly pancake a pedestrian. I'm so distraught. The pedestrian screams obscenities as I screech by. My phone rings again, and I pick it up wildly wondering if it's Pete. But it's my sister, worried about me. I lie that I'm fine, running a red light and careening along residential streets and finally screeching into my driveway, and I leap out, rushing up the front steps, through the porch and into the staged living room area. See the chair. Still empty. Thank God. Everything's still the same as on the day of Nathan, the medium's visit. Nathan. I need to call Nathan. Nathan. I burst as the call connects. It's Max from Debauchery and Debunkery. I need you to make her stop. I pause, stammering over my next words, and grip my teeth and make myself say, I'll take down the debunk video. I'll say you were right. Just make her stop. Do you believe? Comes the tinny voice on the phone. Sure, fine. Just make her stop. If you believe, says the voice, you must publicly announce your belief before you end yourself and your channel. Wah. The blood in my veins turns to ice as I remember the deal. That absurd deal. If I believe, I end my channel and myself. If I don't believe, nothing happens. So Max, you'll be fine if you don't believe, says the small, rational voice in my head. If I don't believe, as long as I'm still a skeptic, But tears start into my eyes, the phone shaking in my fingers because I'm looking at my texts and there's a new one from Pete. Hello, this is Jay on my grandfather's phone. He had a heart attack yesterday and passed away. Scrolling up to the previous texts, it's just the picture he sent over and over again of the chair. But now I see her, I fucking see her. And now I can't make myself unsee her, I can't. And I'm certain that when finally I see her in the flesh again and my 5 days are over, I'll end my account and myself in OH. Fuck me, how do I stop it? Please help me. I whimper into the phone. Nathan's voice cackles. Only it doesn't sound like Nathan. I sink down to the floor in despair. And that's when I find it on the carpet. That matte black card of hers. Black like the blackest void in the universe. Except those words make believe and the picture of the eye looking at me and the number. And I remember, she likes referrals. I still have a few hours left to find someone else. So I'm making this final post. Please, are you a skeptic? You think I'm making this all up? That it's just nonsense? That I'm a ha 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 ha. I'm an actor? Ha 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 ha. Perfect. Okay, please, listen, I believe and I need you to look her up. I need you to call her. Call this number, redacted. Call her and no matter how skeptical you are, she'll make you believe. But I beg you to do it soon. Now. Call her now. I promise she'll make you believe. Okay, I admit it. I was rude, but I was tired. I'd just gotten off work and my sister, Jessica, called, panicking. Please, can you watch Vinny? It's an emergency. I was exhausted, but I wanted to do my part. Prove that I was a dependable brother. My sister had just gone through a painful divorce and was barely treading water. Figured, why the hell not? I'll help. So that afternoon, I went to the park with Venny, settled on a bench, watched her play. I could barely keep my eyes open as she ran around. Out of the corner of my vision, I noticed a boy alone at the swings. He seemed so miserable and dejected. His eyes pointed at the ground. My heart ached just looking at him. So I waved, hoping to spread some joy into his little heart. The kid noticed me, waved back. It was the first time I realized. He had clown makeup all over his face. It was old, worn, like it hadn't been washed off in days. That's odd, I thought. Turned my attention back to Venny. She was teetering down a slide, giggling. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps. "Will you play with me?" It was the clown kid. He stared at me with deep, pleading eyes. I craned my gaze for his parents, but no adults were paying attention to him. Everyone was busy watching their own children. "Sorry, I'm busy. Please." I pivoted to my phone, hoping to communicate that I wasn't up for talking. But he just stood there, watching me. This kid couldn't have been more than 5 years old. He was adorable, little blonde with high cheekbones and a cute button nose. But his face was smeared in that old carnival makeup. It disturbed me. "Listen, I'm busy and I've got stuff to do. Why don't you go find your mom and dad?" "But I want to play with you." I pocketed my phone, left the kid, found Venny, carried her to the swings. I didn't want to be rude, but my job was to take care of Venny, and that was it. Plus, I didn't like it when random kids talked to me. When Venny and I got to the swings, I glanced back to the bench. The clown kid was still there, kicking the ground, like a lost boy without hope. After a few minutes at the swings, I got a text from Jessica. "Interview's taking longer. Can you watch Venny until dinner?" "Sure," I responded. "Hey, Venny, want pizza?" "Yes." I loaded Venny in the car, moved for the driver's seat. I screamed, clutching my chest with fright. The clown kid was perched on the hood of my car, hugging his knees, sobbing. "You scared me," I said. "Where are your parents?" "Dead." "What?" I tightened my throat, a sense of unease creeping in. "I'm calling 911. I yanked out my phone, dialed the number. 911. "What's your emergency?" "Hi, I'm at the park next to the market. I have this kid that says he's..." I peeked inside the vehicle to make sure Venny was okay. She was playing with my tablet, grinning. When I turned back to check on the boy, he was gone. "Sir, you still there?" "Yes." My voice cracked with confusion. "This kid's..." I raced around the car, glanced up and down the street. Couldn't find him anywhere. "Hello." I peered inside the vehicle. Venny was still fiddling with the tablet. "Hello. Give me a second." I opened the door, smiled at Venny. "Uncle Greg's gonna go check on someone. Be right back." I locked the doors, made sure the air conditioning was running, hurried through the park. It was a small area. I was shocked that I couldn't see the boy anywhere. How far could a 5-year-old get in a few seconds? I asked an older couple, "Have you seen a boy about 5 years old? In clown makeup?" They just stared at me like I was a psychopath. I moved to a young mom. "Have you seen a little boy wearing clown makeup?" She shook her head. "No." I asked everyone in the park. They all said the same thing. "Haven't seen him." By now, the 911 operator was getting annoyed. "Sir, you said there's a child." "Yes, there was a boy, but now he's gone. I'm worried about him. Stay on site. An officer is en route." I waited in the car with Venny, praying for the police to arrive. When they finally did, I answered all their questions. Their interest peaked when I mentioned the boy's parents were dead. The officers seemed a little unnerved as they motioned me to go. "Thanks for all your help, sir. You can leave now." As soon as I started to pull away, Jessica called. "Guess what? I got the job." "That's wonderful. Finally, some good news. Can you drop Venny off at my place?" "Of course." I pulled away from the park, drove Venny to her house, then left for my apartment. When I got home, I tore off my clothes, slipped into some shorts and a tank top. I was tired and ready to put the day's strangeness behind me. I flopped onto the couch, opened my phone, started browsing emails. After an hour of relaxing, I heard knocking at the front door. Bump, bump, bump. Who's that? I thought. I wandered to the entryway, peered through the eye hole. No one was there. Weird, I thought. Returned to the couch. Bump, bump, bump. Hello! I opened the door, glanced up and down the hall. Still no one. What the hell? I mused, shut the door, moved to my bedroom. Will you play with me? Jesus Christ. I leapt back, almost suffering a heart attack. There on my bed was the clown kid, smiling at me. How'd you get in here? I followed you. Followed me? By this point, I was so scared, confused. I just wanted to get out of there. That's it. We're leaving. I took the clown kid by the hand, led him towards the front door. Where are we going? To the police station. I was so shell-shocked that I could barely utter any words. I needed to find my keys, get us in the car, and go. I left the boy at the front door, began searching. Where did I put them? I ran to my desk. Nolak. Dove into the kitchen. All my regular key spots were empty. Looking for this? The kid's voice came from the bathroom. The bathroom. I dashed in toward his voice, found him standing at my toilet, dangling my keys over the bowl. Wait, what are you? Splash. He dropped them in. I dashed forward, yanked my keys out of the water. What the hell's the matter with you? I screamed, my cheeks turning red. The kid shrank back, traumatized by my outburst. I felt awful. This boy, even though he was strange and frightened me, still tugged at my heartstrings. I knelt, softened my voice. I'm sorry. I just want to get you out of here and find help. The kid sniffed away a tear. I thought you were nice, but you're mean like everyone else. I wrapped my arms around his tiny shoulders. I'm gonna get you some help. It'll be okay. I patted his back softly, just like I always did with Venny. I was too distracted to notice what he was doing with his hands. As I embraced him, a burning sensation coursed through my body. Ah! I looked down. A pair of scissors was buried into my ribs. What the? My eyes locked onto the clown kid's furious gaze. You should have played with me. Frightened, I stumbled back, slapped my hand on the wound, blood seeping through my fingers. I leapt up, slammed the bathroom door shut, sprinted to the kitchen, poured peroxide over my cut. Oh God! I gasped as the liquid ran over my wound, stinging me. Bump, bump, bump. I could hear knocking on the bathroom door. Come on, Greg. Play with me. He knew my name. I pressed a rag to my side, limped to the living room, but somehow the clown kid was already there, waiting for me, screaming. My parents never played with me. I hated them. I hate you too. I sprinted for the door. I just wanted to leave, climb into my car, drive to the hospital. But then, a light hit me. My eyes spun. Suddenly, I was in another house, in another room. There was blood on the floor and furniture. I was in a nursery. A man and woman were lying face down in a pool of blood, and a child, who looked like the clown kid but much younger, thrashed in his crib, screaming at the top of his lungs. Play with me. Play with me. Another burst of light hit me. I fell back against the door. I was back in my own living room. The clown kid was levitating toward me, scissors raised for a killing strike. I pulled myself up, burst out the door, nearly tripping as I slammed into my car. I leapt in, gunned it down the road, heading for the hospital, delirious from blood loss. When I stumbled into the emergency room, I collapsed in a daze, hospital personnel swarming over me. I was in the hospital for 2 nights. Now I'm at Jessica's place. I haven't gone back to my apartment. Probably never will. The police investigated everything. Didn't find any signs of the clown kid. They're not even sure he was real. But Jesus, I know he was. I touched him with my own hands. What was he? Demon? Human? Lost spirit sent to torment me? Either way, I'm staying with my sister until things calm down. The only thing that keeps me sane is Venny. I care about her so much. Now that Jessica has more hours at work, I get to help out more. Sure, it makes it hard to get work done, but that's fine. I never liked my job anyway. Besides, being with Venny gives me purpose. I take every opportunity one can to be with her. Just this morning, Jessica offered me another babysitting opportunity, texting me, "Can you watch Venny this afternoon? She's really excited to show you her new playmate. She thinks you'll like him." All right, let's get one thing straight. I take things, specifically cars, nice ones, the kind that cost more than most people make in a year, maybe 5. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, but save the judgment. I have my reasons. I don't hit regular folks, people struggling to get by. My targets? The ones who have more than they know what to do with. The ones who wouldn't miss one of their shiny toys for more than a week before their insurance coughed up for a new, even shinier one. You could say I'm a thief with a particular clientele. They can afford it. They probably deserve it, most of them, the way they get that rich in the first place. I'm good at what I do. Very good. Been at it for years. The tools of the trade, the methods, that's not what this is about. I'm not here to give a seminar. I'm here because of what happened last Monday. Something that's got me looking over my shoulder. Something that's made me question everything. Something that makes the hair on my arms stand up just thinking about it. There was this guy, one of the local big shots. Old money, new money, didn't matter. He had a lot of it. And he had this car. Oh man, this car. Latest model, foreign, sleek, black as a starless night. The kind of car that whispers power even when it's parked. I'd seen him around town, cruising in it, that smug look on his face. He became my project. You don't just walk up and take a car like that. Not if you want to keep doing this. You watch. You learn. Patience is key. So I watched him for weeks. Learned his routines, his habits. Where he went when he went. Most of it was predictable: office, fancy restaurants, golf club. Boring. But then I found the anomaly. The little secret. Every Monday night, late, he'd drive out to this apartment building on the edge of town. Not the nicest part of town. Definitely not where you'd expect a guy like him to be hanging out. He'd park on a quiet side street, go inside for a few hours, then leave. I figured it was an affair. Classic. His little escape. His little secret made him vulnerable. And his car parked out there, away from his secure garage at his mansion. That was my opportunity. So last Monday I was ready. Dressed dark. Tools in my kit. Heart thumping a steady rhythm of adrenaline and anticipation. I found a spot in the shadows across from where he usually parked, and I waited. The night was cool, quiet. The streetlights cast long, lonely shadows. Perfect. Right on schedule. The black beast purred up the street and parked. He got out, looked around quickly, a habit probably, but not thorough enough, and then hurried into the apartment building. The door clicked shut behind him. Showtime. I gave it a few minutes, let the street settle. Then I moved, quick, silent, like a ghost. Years of practice make you light on your feet. I reached the car. It gleamed under the streetlight, even more imposing up close. State-of-the-art security, I knew that. But like I said, I'm good. I got to work. My tools are specialized. They do what they're supposed to do. No loud noises, no fuss. The driver's side door clicked open with a soft, almost polite snick. No alarm. Beautiful. I slipped inside, a grin playing on my lips. The smell of new leather and expensive air freshener filled my nostrils. Cocky bastard. I ran my hand over the smooth dashboard. First thing, always checked the usual spots for trackers or kill switches. Then, I popped open the glove compartment, just out of habit, looking for registration, anything interesting. And there they were, the keys, just sitting there, in the glove compartment, the actual factory-issued smart key. I blinked. No way. People this rich, with cars this expensive, they don't just leave the keys in the glove box. It was too easy. Suspiciously easy. A laugh rumbled in my chest. Maybe he was just that arrogant. Or maybe his mind was on his Monday night activities. Whatever the reason, I wasn't going to question a gift. My job just got a whole lot simpler. Easy hunt, but I'm the winner. I pressed the start button. The engine came to life with a low, powerful thrum that vibrated through the seat. Music to my ears. I checked the mirrors, pulled away from the curb smoothly, and headed out of town, towards my hidden garage where I'd let it cool off for a while. The drive was smooth. The car handled like a dream, responsive, powerful. I was feeling good, the adrenaline singing in my veins. Another successful night. This one would fetch a very pretty penny. Then, about 10 minutes into the drive, on a dark, deserted stretch of back road, I felt it. A weird sensation on my back, low down near the base of my spine, like something was tickling me, gently at first. I shifted in the seat, arched my back a little, thinking maybe the upholstery was bunched up or something. The feeling didn't stop. It got stronger. The tickling became a prickling, little sharp points pressing into my back, through my shirt. I frowned. What the hell? This car was brand new. Were the seats defective? Some kind of weird massage function I didn't know about? Kept getting worse. The prickling turned into stings. Sharp, insistent stings, like a dozen needles jabbing into my skin, all along my spine, spreading outwards across my back. It started to hurt, a burning, stinging pain. What the actual? I muttered, reaching behind me, trying to feel what was going on. My hand touched the smooth leather of the seat. Nothing out of the ordinary, but the pain was intensifying. I had to stop. I pulled the car over to the side of the dark road, engine still running, and flicked on the interior dome light. The pain was really bad now, like my back was on fire, being pierced from 100 different points. I unbuckled my seatbelt, gritting my teeth. I needed to see what was happening to the seat. I twisted around, craning my neck to look at the driver's seat I'd just been sitting in. My breath hitched. My blood ran cold. The seat, it wasn't a seat anymore. Where the smooth leather and ergonomic cushioning should have been, there was something else. The dome light cast a sickly yellow glow on it. It was red, wet-looking, and it was moving, pulsing almost like a giant, fleshy tongue. A grotesque, meaty slab, the color of raw liver, filling the shape of the driver's seat. And sticking out of it all over its surface were tiny, needle-sharp points, gleaming like 1,000 tiny, obsidian teeth. They were retracting and extending slightly, rhythmically. Those were the things that had been stabbing into my back. Before I could even scream, before my brain could fully process the impossible horror in front of me, the seatbelt, which I just unbuckled, moved. It whipped out like a striking snake, a dark, nylon serpent. It wrapped around my chest, tight, constricting, clicking back into its buckle with a sickening thunk. Pinned me against the thing in the seat. Panic exploded in my chest, hot and suffocating. I thrashed, clawed at the belt, but it was impossibly tight, digging into me. Then came the pressure, and a horrifying sucking sensation from my back. The meaty tongue seat, it was pressing against me, those thousands of tiny, sharp edges digging deeper. I could feel a disgusting, wet warmth spreading across my back, and a ghastly pulling, like it was trying to draw me into itself, trying to eat me. I screamed then, a raw, terrified sounds swallowed by the confines of the car. I twisted, bucked, trying to break free, but the belt held me fast, and the chair thing was relentless, its sharp points embedding further, the sucking pressure increasing. Pain, sharp and agonizing, lanced through my entire back. My mind raced, fueled by sheer terror. I was going to die here, consumed by a goddamn car seat. Then I remembered. My pocket knife. Small but sharp. Always carry it. My hand fumbled desperately for my pocket, fingers shaking, the car vibrating slightly, or maybe it was just me. The chair thing pulsed against my back, a wet, slurping sound now audible over my own ragged breaths. My fingers closed around the familiar cold metal of the knife. I yanked it out, flicked it open with a clumsy, desperate movement. The belt. I had to cut the belt. I sawed at it, the small blade struggling against the tough nylon. The pain in my back was unbearable, a symphony of 1,000 burning needles. I could feel my shirt soaking with something. I didn't want to think what. The sucking was stronger, pulling me harder against the monstrous seat. Get off me! Get the hell off me! I shrieked, tears of pain and terror streaming down my face. The knife bit through, one strand, then another. With a final, desperate yank, the belt snapped. I lurched forward, away from the horrifying seat, a gasp tearing from my lungs. My back was on fire. I scrambled for the door handle. Locked. Of course, it was locked. Central locking probably engaged when I started driving. No time. I could feel the presence of the seat behind me, sense it moving, probably trying to re-engage. In a surge of adrenaline-fueled desperation, I threw myself onto my back on the passenger seat. Thank God it still looked like a normal seat, and kicked out with both legs, hard, at the driver's side window. My heels connected with the glass, spiderwebbed, but didn't break. I kicked again, with every ounce of strength I had, screaming a wordless cry of terror and exertion. The window exploded outwards in a shower of safety glass. I didn't hesitate. I wriggled, clawed, and threw myself through the opening, heedless of the jagged edges. I landed hard on the gravel shoulder of the road, pain flaring through my already agonized back, my arms, my legs. I didn't look back. I scrambled to my feet and I ran. I ran like I'd never run before in my life, away from that car, away from that thing. I didn't care about my tools, didn't care about anything except putting as much distance as possible between me and it. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. Then I stumbled into the woods and hid, shaking, bleeding until the sun came up. I never went back for the car. I don't want to know if it's still there. I don't want to know what it is. I'm writing this because you need to know. You need to be careful. Those expensive, flashy cars. Maybe some of them aren't just machines. Maybe some of them are hungry. Maybe that rich guy wasn't having an affair. Maybe he was feeding his goddamn car. I don't know. All I know is that my back is a mess of tiny puncture wounds, and I'll never look at a luxury car the same way again. There's something out there, pretending to be a car, and it's waiting. Be careful whose toys you try to take. Some of them bite back, hard. I know how this sounds. Another idiot breaking into an old building and getting spooked by shadows. But this wasn't shadows, and I don't think it ever left. It was Eli's idea. He's always been into this kind of stuff, draining tunnels, decommissioned prisons, Cold War bunkers. Urban exploration, but the real kind. No YouTube channels. No Patreon. Just grainy maps, broken fences, and a flashlight gripped too tight. This time it was an abandoned sanatorium up in the Wasatch Range. Built in the 1920s, condemned in the 70s, and left to rot ever since. Locals call it Pine Haven, but good luck finding it on any official registry. I only found one blurry photo online. For stories of cracked stucco walls and a rooftop cupola eaten away by rust and time. The inside's mostly intact, Eli said, and it's not fenced. No security. People say it's haunted, but come on. That's just the stories they tell to keep teens out. I should have known better. Stories like that are usually warnings in disguise. We parked just before the old fire road washed out and hiked the rest of the way in. The place rose out of the trees like a tumor, long and wide, windowless on the first floor with metal grates still bolted over the lower glass. The roof sagged in the middle, paint peeled like skin, but it was quiet, too quiet.
No birds.
No wind through the pines. Not even the crunch of twigs beneath our boots felt natural. Just that soft, oppressive hush, like we'd stepped into a place sealed off from the rest of the world. We slipped through a side door already rusted open and stepped into a lobby that looked more like a mausoleum. The air stank of mildew and old blood, the kind of coppery scent that lingers in your teeth. Light filtered in through dust-choked windows, casting everything in a gray film. The floor tiles were cracked, and an overturned wheelchair lay rusting in the middle of the room like it had been thrown. Eli clicked his flashlight on and grinned.
Small.
Let's check the intake rooms. The first 2 floors were empty, mostly old exam rooms and crumbling hallways. Filing cabinets overturned. Doors hanging loose on rusted hinges. Graffiti on every wall. Most of it just tags, but one phrase was scrawled over and over in different handwriting. "Don't look up." I pointed it out once. Eli just shrugged. Probably some edgy teen thing. He said it, but he didn't look convinced. We found a staircase near the old kitchen and started heading toward the 3rd floor when we heard it, just behind us. Faint click, like something adjusting its weight on a metal frame. We both froze. Flashlights swept behind us. Nothing. Then another sound. Above us this time. A slow, dragging scrape, like claws moving across an old pipe. Eli looked at me, eyebrows raised. "Rat?" he said, though he didn't believe it. I could hear it in his voice. That's when we noticed it. The ceiling. It was covered in dark, soot-stained smears. Long streaks trailing from room to room. Some of them branched off, like something had crawled between the beams. We didn't say anything after that. We just kept going. 3rd floor, then 4th, and still the smears followed. The 4th floor was different. The air was warmer, close, like it hadn't moved in decades. The corridor we stepped into was lined with patient rooms. All the doors were slightly ajar. The paint was peeling in long, warped strips, and deep gouges ran along the walls like something with claws had tried to stop itself from being dragged. We didn't speak, not even in whispers. And then came the laughter, soft, childlike, coming from one of the rooms ahead. We both turned. Eli raised his flashlight. The beam hit the cracked wall at the end of the hallway, and then, briefly, something moved in front of it. It scuttled across the ceiling like an insect, fast, almost boneless, pale, narrow limbs, hands that were too long, fingers like nails. We ran. We didn't plan to go to the top floor, but whatever it was behind us now. The sound of something chittering through the vents followed us up. Scraping metal, hollow laughter, a voice, my voice, mimicked back at me in whispers. We slammed the stairwell door behind us and emerged into the top floor. An old communal ward with broken beds, shattered windows, and empty curtain tracks hanging like vines. Something about the layout felt wrong. The angles were off. Too many shadows where light should have pooled. I looked at Eli. He was pale, sweating. "We're not alone up here," he muttered. And then we saw it, several of them, hanging from the ceiling like bats. Their skin was papery and translucent. Their arms bent backward, heads tilted in impossible angles. All of them twitching, watching. The nearest one opened its eyes. They glowed white. No pupils, no irises, just blank, milky orbs. And then, the first one dropped. We bolted, slamming through a door that led to an old records room. I turned and wedged a filing cabinet against the frame while Eli backed away, flashlight trembling in his hand. From behind the door came that same noise. Scratching. then tapping, then the sound of something laughing in my voice again. We're trapped up here now. Eli thinks we can make it to the rooftop. Says maybe there's another stairwell on the other side, or we can signal someone. But I don't think these things live by the same rules we do. The hallway outside is dark. They're still moving, still waiting, still learning how we sound. They haven't tried the door again. Not yet. But I don't think they've left either. I'm writing this down in case we don't make it out. In case someone finds our bodies and needs to know not to come here. Not to look up. Because that's where they hide. Not under the bed. Not in the closet. Overhead. Always watching. The scraping stopped about 10 minutes ago. That's the worst part, I think, the quiet. Because I don't believe they're gone. I think they're waiting, listening, rearranging themselves in the dark. We're still on the top floor, moving slow. Eli kept close at first, flashlight beams sweeping over broken bed frames and tangled curtains. His voice had that hollow edge to it, barely above a whisper, like he was afraid even his breath would draw them in. Maybe they're nocturnal, he muttered once, stepping over a rusted-for pole. Maybe they can't handle direct light. Then why are the smears on every ceiling? I asked. He didn't answer after that. The top floor stretched longer than I expected. Half the hallway was warped by age. Floorboards groaning with each step. The whole thing tilted slightly left like the building was sagging toward the mountain. We passed more rooms. Some were clearly patient dorms, with 6 or more beds lined in rows, metal frames chewed through with rust. Others felt wrong, like the kind of rooms used for isolation. Heavy iron doors, scoring marks on the inside walls. One had deep clawed gouges along the floor, like something had been dragged out by force, but hadn't gone quietly. I don't know how long we wandered, but it must have been at least half an hour before Eli started to crack. Not loudly, not a panic attack, just slowly letting his guard down. They haven't followed us, he said, his voice shaking less. Maybe it's like animals. You enter their territory, they posture, try to scare you off. But once you leave the nest, they don't care. He even smiled a little. I should have stopped him. I should have said something. But I wanted him to be right. I wanted to believe we were safe. We reached a wide-open corridor near the administrative wing. The ceiling here was high, cathedral-style, arches and thick beams overhead, like an old church. Dust floated in the beam of our lights. Everything felt almost still. I think we're close, I said. Maintenance rooms. If there's a back stairwell or old service access, it'll be this way. That's when Eli laughed. Actually laughed. Not manic, just nervous relief, like we'd finally turned a corner. Hell yeah, he said. Man, when we get out of here, I'm never going back underground again. No tunnels, no mines. I'll do rooftops. Sunlight. That's. I heard the thump before he did. Came from above. He didn't even have time to look up. Something dropped from the beams in complete silence and snatched him straight into the air. There wasn't even a scream at first. Just the flashlight hitting the floor and spinning wildly. Its beam casting flickering shadows of limbs writhing around him like a spider wrapping its prey. Then the sounds came. Wet tearing. Bone snapping. Eli's voice. Gurgling. Choking. Pleading. Cut off like someone pressed mute. I froze. I didn't move. Couldn't. The thing, whatever it was, didn't come for me. It hung there in the rafters like a sack of skin filled with knives, pulling Eli's body apart in jerking spasms. Pieces fell. His boot, his arm, something that might have been his jaw. I ran. I don't remember how far or how long. My light flickered the whole way. The ceiling above me groaned. Things skittered above, mirroring my pace, whispering in my voice and Eli's voice and even voices I didn't recognize. At the far end of the top floor, after turning into what looked like an old staff corridor, I found a secondary staircase. Hidden behind a warped door barely hanging on its hinges, it led down, down, down into blackness. But it wasn't blocked. The first step held. Then the second. No collapse. No rusted trap. I turned back once. The hallway behind me was empty, but I swear, I saw fingers slide along the ceiling beam above the hall. Just the fingers, long bent backward, hooked like praying mantis claws. Then they vanished. I'm in the stairwell now. I haven't gone down yet. I had to write this. I had to say what happened. Eli's gone, and I know how this looks. Creepy story, right? But I didn't make this up. There's something in Pine Haven, something that doesn't walk. It hangs, it waits, and it learns your voice so it can call your name the second you stop looking up. I'm going down now. If you don't hear from me again, someone burn this place to the ground. Salt the earth, seal the tunnels, and don't look at the ceilings. I still have cell service in bursts. If this uploads, I'm not sure I'm alone in this stairwell anymore. I heard Eli again, but it didn't sound like pain. It sounded like he was laughing. I let the hot water beat down on my head. I had to get rid of this headache before the meeting. I couldn't figure out why I felt so lousy. My eyes were bloodshot. My mouth felt as dry as a desert wind and tasted like summer roadkill. I needed to look sharp and with it for the meeting, even if it was online and I could technically be naked from the waist down. After a good 30 minutes, I got out of the shower feeling a little better. My mouth still tasted like shit after brushing my teeth, but no one would be able to smell my breath over the internet, and I knew I had eye drops somewhere to perk up my eyes. I went into the bedroom and got dressed. My bed was a mess. I didn't understand why. I thought I'd slept soundly. Didn't even remember getting up to go to the bathroom. I went to straighten it. When I picked up my pillow to fluff it, I noticed a white smudge on the blue fabric. I touched it. Greasy, like lotion, or makeup. I stared at it, trying to figure out where it had come from, but nothing came to mind. I tossed the pillowcase into the hamper and headed into the kitchen to grab something quick to eat. There was an open, half-empty water bottle on the counter. I vaguely remembered drinking it. I poured out the rest and grabbed a fresh one from the fridge. I sat down at my desk with my water and a snack. Still had 10 minutes before the Zoom. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed one of the couch cushions was crooked. Weird. I hadn't even sat on it in days. The meeting started. 18 people. Everything was going fine until my boss, Patricia, asked me to send the group some photos of a housing development I'd found while traveling in Holland. I smiled. "You'll be impressed," I said. I opened the photo app on my phone and started scrolling to find the folder. But the last photo on my camera roll wasn't from Holland. The last photo stopped my heart cold. It looked like 4 grotesque figures sitting on a couch. I zoomed in. My pulse went haywire. My skin tightened, and goosebumps rose in waves. "Mandy!" Patricia's voice cut through. "Did you find the photos?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. I was locked on that image, trying to make sense of it. "Mandy!" This time sharper. My stomach clenched. I felt like I might throw up. I looked at the laptop camera, muttered, "Excuse me," and slammed it shut. I stared at the photo, hands shaking. There were 4 people. 4 clowns. They were sitting on my couch, dressed in black hoodies and black and white clown makeup. These weren't friendly clowns. Not the kind that bumble around at children's parties. These were something else. They looked like gang members mixed with Art the Clown. They were all staring straight into the camera, expressionless, dead serious. But that wasn't the worst part. What made my stomach twist and my vision blur was the woman draped across their laps. Naked, limp, with their white-gloved hands strategically placed on the parts of her body you don't show to the world. That woman was me. I felt like my heart was about to explode. My body buzzed with panic. No, this wasn't real. It had to be fake. AI generated, photoshopped. But then I remembered the greasy white smudge on my pillowcase, the water bottle I didn't recall drinking, and how awful I'd felt when I woke up. Texts were flooding in from Patricia. She was pissed. I needed to answer her, but I couldn't focus with that photo sitting in my gallery like a loaded gun. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. It's just a prank, I told myself. Some kind of sick, glitched image or joke. I deleted it, closed my eyes, breathed in, breathed out. Then I opened my eyes, ready to text her back. But that freaking picture was back on my phone. Clumsy me, I thought, and deleted it again, only to see it reappear again and again. Same image, same timestamp, same frozen horror. My chest tightened. I could feel the panic build again. I checked the metadata and it showed it was taken last night and with my phone. Trying not to throw up, I opened the sleep tracker app. It showed I left the bed at 2:17 a.m. and returned at 4:42 a.m. out of bed for over 2 hours. I had no memory of that at all. There was also a sharp spike in my heart rate, and location data said I walked around the apartment. I couldn't take it anymore. My hands were shaking, and my stomach felt like it was trying to tie itself into knots. I went to the cops. I didn't want to be one of those people, but what else was I supposed to do? For strangers might have broken into my apartment and posed with me while I was unconscious. That's not a prank. That's assault. I didn't care how crazy I sounded. I had proof. That picture, the timestamp, the sleep data, the greasy white smudge on my pillow, the open water bottle. I knew something had happened. The cop at the front desk looked at the photo for maybe 5 seconds before shrugging. Probably AI generated, he said. What? We see this a lot nowadays. People prank each other with fake photos. There are websites where you can make this stuff. I blinked. You think I made this? He shrugged again. Could have been anyone with access to your phone or cloud account. Could be a bug. Try changing your passwords. Make sure your Bluetooth's off when you sleep. That's it. I asked. You can file a report if you want. But if there's no sign of a break-in and no injuries, I don't think we'll be assigning anyone to it. I felt like I'd been slapped. That's me. That's my couch. That's my tattoo, I said, and pointed to the purple butterfly on my thigh, clearly visible in the photo. Look, he said, already bored. I'm not saying it's funny. I'm just saying we get this kind of thing a lot lately. You can file a report, but I doubt anyone's going to take it seriously. And that was it. I left with nothing. Just me. And that photo. That night I didn't sleep. I kept checking the locks. I unplugged everything. The router, Alexa, even my TV. I stuffed a towel under the bedroom door. Not sure why, but it felt safer somehow. Then I sat in bed with a kitchen knife and my laptop. At around 2 a.m., I started digging. I searched everything I could think of. Photo hacks, phone exploits, deepfake generators, sleepwalking forums. I finally found a thread buried deep in a tech forum. No usernames, just long strings of numbers and cryptic replies. Most of the thread was about something called blindfeed.exe, not a program you download. It's something that gets pushed to your device through sketchy apps, QR codes, and even shared Wi-Fi. Once it's on your phone, it can access everything. Cameras, mics, sleep data, can delete files, edit photos, upload them somewhere you'll never find. But the worst part is part of a challenge, a dark web competition. People compete in teams to stage the most creative home invasion photos or videos, drugging their victims, dressing up, posing with them. Bonus points for intimacy, emotion, or absurdity. The more disturbing the photo, the more views it gets. The more views, the higher the score. The team with the most upvotes wins real money. Some victims never even know they've been featured. Others, well, they figure it out too late. And if your photo keeps coming back after you delete it, that means you're trending. I couldn't stay there. I packed a bag, paid cash, and checked into a crappy roadside motel under a fake name. I unplugged everything, shoved a chair under the doorknob, slept with my phone in a Faraday bag and my knife under the pillow. Still, I woke up at 6:13 a.m. with that crawling feeling under my skin. I got up and noticed a piece of paper on the dresser. It hadn't been there when I went to sleep. I was sure of it. It was a printed photo. Me, asleep in the motel bed, surrounded by 4 clowns. 2 crouched beside me. 1 sat at the foot of the bed. The 4th clown was lying next to me, head on the same pillow, his face turned toward mine, like a couple. Underneath, typed in bold black letters, "You looked better in the first one. I've done everything I can. New name, new place, no smart devices, no Wi-Fi. I sleep with the lights on. Doesn't matter. They're still playing." So if you ever find a photo on your phone that you don't remember taking, if you're unconscious in it, and you're not alone, don't delete it, don't post it, and don't try to track it, because the more people who see it, the more points they get. And if your photo goes viral, they'll come back for a sequel. Until 3 weeks ago, I was living what most would consider a simple and happy life. I'm a stay-at-home dad, probably on Reddit more than I care to admit. I met my wife, Noriko, or Nori for short, in Osaka, Japan, 12 years ago during a work trip for an advertising agency. Shortly after we started dating, Nori was offered a senior position at her company's newly opened NYC branch. At the time, I was living in Connecticut but working remotely, so it was an easy decision to move in together in NYC. Plus, her mother has lived in Queens for the past 30 years, so it just made sense. 3 years later, we got married. The following spring, we had our son, Nicholas. Again, I'd like to emphasize that we've lived what I'd call a pretty normal life. We've had our ups and downs, but have never experienced anything quite like what I'm about to share. 3 weeks ago, Nicholas pulled this little gizmo out of his backpack. At first glance, it reminded me of a Tamagotchi, a little piece of plastic that easily could fit in your pocket. 3 or 4 little buttons on the bottom and a cheap display up top. However, the design wasn't colorful like I remember Tamagotchis being. It was obsidian black. From a distance, you could easily mistake it for some kind of medical device. And even stranger, I never could actually see any pet on the display. Either way, Nori and I hadn't any clue where he got it from. We presume a friend at school must have gifted it to him. He called it his tether pet and was nothing short of obsessed with it. I mean, I could understand. I remember getting a Tamagotchi for Christmas when I was his age. It felt like you were responsible for some other life form. Your relationship with the toy often felt like a life or death situation. Nikki was certainly under a similar spell. So that same Sunday, we piled into Nori's Corolla and took the BQ Expressway to Mount Sinai Hospital in Queens to visit her mom, Aki, who's suffering from bone cancer. Nikki was in the back seat, attending to his tether pet. "How's your Tamagotchi, buddy?" "What? Your little pet there." Nikki is normally eager to yap Nori and I's ear off about whatever his fascination of the day is. But for whatever reason, his tone was flat and serious when discussing his tether pet, Fine. "Oh yeah? Do you have a name for him?" "It's a girl." "Oh cool. What's her name?" "Baba." It came with the name. I didn't get to pick it. Nori tried to play along. "Baba? That's cute." "Not really. She's always hungry. And whenever she poops, I have to clean it up." I let out a laugh. "Reminds me of somebody I used to know." "No, Dad. It's a lot of responsibility. You wouldn't understand." Nori and I laughed. Oh, the simple joys of parenthood. We arrived at Aki's room only to be held back by a couple of nurses. They asked us to wait while Grandma's bedpan was changed. It saddened me to think about how Aki had wilted over the past year. It didn't seem long ago she was in our living room bouncing Nikki on her knee, singing that silly old horse racing anthem. Boom da da boom da da boom boom boom, boom da da boom da da boom boom boom. Nikki loved that. He'd blow up in a fit of laughter every time. Now she couldn't even get out of her hospital bed. Crushed me, but I guess it had happened to me someday too. Before I could get too melancholy, A nurse opened the door with a smile. "She's ready to see you now." We stepped inside and there was Aki, still glowing, albeit dimly, with her usual tender smile. Nikki seemed to snap out of his fog with her in sight, running to her bedside. "Grandma!" Aki tried to roll over and muster a hug for his reception, but it was clearly too much for her. Nori and I followed close behind. This had become a very difficult ritual for Nori to get used to. Aki told us about how her treatment had been going, how she was always in pain, but that there was still a chance she could get through it. I don't know why, but I never had any real faith that she would. I guess I've just seen this scenario play out one too many times. In my experience, at least, it never ended how we all prayed each night that it would. After some more light conversation and updates on work, school, etc., Nikki pulled out his tether pet. "Oh, how are you liking the new toy Grandma gave you?" Nori and I looked at each other flabbergasted. Aki gave it to him. She could barely get out of bed, let alone go buy Nikki a toy from the store. "Aki, where did you get that toy from?" I asked. "Oh, I think one of the doctors gave it to me." Yes, it's something they're giving to a lot of the patients around here. It didn't make any sense, but before I could ask more questions, a nurse came in and told us our time was up and that Aki needed to get some rest. Nori and I had a couple conversations theorizing about why the hospital would have given her the toy. Maybe it was some charity connected to the hospital? Either way, we had more important things to worry about, so as the days went on, we let it go. Everything in our lives continued as normal until the day Nikki lost his tether pet. It was last week Friday. We were just sitting down for dinner when Nikki comes shuffling into the room looking on the verge of tears. "I can't find my tether pet." Nori was setting the table. She had really went all out for us that evening. "Okay, well, after dinner we can all take a look together to find it." Observing my son more closely, he wasn't just upset. He looked devastated. "You don't understand, Mom. She could die if I don't." At this point, I decided it was time to do some father-energy. I took a knee. "Listen, Nicholas, I understand your toy is important to you, but it's just that, right? Toy. So let's sit down and eat the dinner Mama made us and we can take a look after." "Ok." I gave him that stern but tender look a father gives to ensure his way. Nikki nodded solemnly. I gave him a hug and a rub on the back. All throughout dinner, Nikki avoided our usual conversation starters. How was school? How was soccer practice? What do you want to do this weekend? Etc. It was clear his mind was racing. It really rubbed me the wrong way. I don't remember ever being this stressed about my Tamagotchi. Just then, Nori's phone rang. She moved to the edge of kitchen to take the call. I watched as her face slowly settled into a more serious expression as she listened to the other end. She responded with simple, short acknowledgments of what she was hearing as she walked over to the living room. She hung up and began to put on her coat. "Everything okay, honey?" I mouthed to her silently, "Aki." She nodded. "I think it should be fine, but if it becomes serious, I'll call you." "Sounds good." I looked to Nikki and provided a distraction. "Shall we look for Baba?" Nikki nodded his head frantically, clearly unwilling to wait an even second longer. We looked around the house for quite some time. He was certain he had come home with it, so I was pretty determined to help him find it. It really felt like looking for a needle in a haystack, though. It wasn't until we were just about to give up that we found it, fallen beneath the shoe rack near his backpack. I thought for sure we'd have some small celebration of our efforts, but Nikki didn't even smile. He just picked it up and began to shake his head. "Ah, man. What is it, buddy?" "Just a lot of build-up." "Oh? Of what?" "Poop." I laughed. "It's not funny, Dad." She could have suffocated. "From the poop." I laughed even harder. I've always had a stupid sense of humor. Nikki, presumably offended by my not taking this seriously, retreated up to his room. Alone, I decided this would be good a time as any to pop on an old samurai movie for my own selfish pleasures. Plus a 3-hour runtime would keep me up long enough in case Nori called. But about halfway into the movie, she came in the door.
Shopping vet.
I guess it had started raining. She explained that everything ended up okay. A false alarm. I cut the movie short and we went to bed. As we laid together under the sheets, it was becoming clear she couldn't fall asleep. What's wrong, babe? When I got to Sinai today, Mom had an accident. Oh, like she shit herself. I wasn't sure how to respond, but luckily she continued. What if we get so old or sick that some stranger has to literally wipe our ass? I chuckled. I mean, we probably will. She rolled over and looked at me with playful concern. I don't want a stranger to wipe my ass. So you're saying it has to be me? She finally broke into a giggle. Well, how about we just promise to take care of each other? Then I kissed her on the cheek. Deal. The next few days were normal, well, the new normal. Nicky seemingly had lost all interest in having friends over with his ongoing tether pet responsibilities. In fact, we even got an email from his soccer coach that he was absent-mindedly monitoring his device while on the sidelines. We used to get emails that he needed to stop hogging the ball so much. One evening, as we put him to bed, we explained that if his pet continued to affect his school participation, that we'd have no choice but to confiscate it from him. He appeared gravely disturbed by this notion. That'd make you a murderer. It was such an absurd thing to say, but he said it with such conviction. A conviction that I don't believe an 8-year-old should be able to feel. I'd soon understand why. Yesterday, around noon, Nicky's at school, Nori's at work. I get a call from the principal. Everything's fine. We just wanted to let you know that we needed to confiscate a toy from your son today, as it was distracting him from class work. No parent ever enjoys these calls. I apologize. We've talked to him about this before. We'll have another chat about it tonight and make sure he gets the message. Would you like us to hold onto it for now, or send him home with it? God, I wish I could go back in time. Hold on to it. I knew Nicky would be furious, but as a father, I assumed this was a good opportunity for some tough love. Sure enough, when Nicky got home, he was in a panic. Dad, they took my tether pet away. She's gonna die, Dad. She's gonna die. I got on one knee and gave him my look. Even if it dies, it'll be okay, because it's just a toy, right? You can always just start over. He started crying, as though really accepting the fact that this could really be the end for his pet. It's not just a toy, Dad. It feels real. It is real. Right then, it all clicked. Nicky wasn't grieving a toy. He was grieving his grandma. I felt a wave of relief, now seemingly able to connect the dots that didn't align to me before. I decided to make this a teaching moment. Nicholas, death is hard. We're all facing that with Grandma right now, right? Nicky nodded knowingly. But it's a natural part of life. It's not wrong or bad. It's okay. Can feel sad to let somebody go. But everything really will be okay. Really? Come here, pal. I pulled him in for a hug. Death is what makes life special. It's what makes each moment count. It's a good thing. Snot was running down Nicky's nose onto my shoulder. But I don't want Baba to die. I know. Just then, my phone began to ring. It was Nori. Hey, Han, what's up? The hospital just called me. I think it's happening. My heart stopped. I let go of Nicky. He stepped back, feeling my mood shift. What did they say? She's refused to eat or drink all day, including her medications. Then she had a seizure and has only been getting worse since then. Where's Nicky? Why did this feel familiar? This sensation. It was like deja vu. I could feel myself freezing up. Nicky tapped my knee. Daddy? What's wrong? I blurted out, Honey, what was that name you called Mom as a baby? Nori seemed frustrated that I had ignored her question. Gabba? Or Baba, I think. Babe, you and Nicky need to meet me at Mount Sinai. A jolt of fear struck down my spine. All of a sudden, my mind felt like it was racing ahead of me. My mother-in-law's mortality being connected to a toy was quite the leap, I know. But in that moment, it truly felt crystal clear. How could this happen? It felt like the most basic rules of reality were simply torn out from under me. I had to move. Fast. We're on our way. A wall of obsidian clouds lay heavy above our neighborhood. Nikki and I piled into the car. Daddy, where are we going? We're going to see Grandma, but we'd take a quick detour first. Nikki looked afraid.
Is Grandma gonna die, Daddy?
I couldn't respond. What could I even say at that point? I'm supposed to be the voice of reason, but I felt like I was losing it. In fact, it had started raining and it took me 6 blocks to realize I didn't have my wipers on. We pulled up to the school entrance. Nikki, wait here. I leaped out of the car before Nikki could question my actions. I ran up to the glass double doors, pounding my fists in the rain. Hey, is there anybody in there? Nothing. I ran around the building towards the gymnasium. Locked. I was really starting to feel hopeless. I noticed a window slightly ajar on the 2nd story of the building. I tried scaling the wall, but the downpour made it impossible. Fuck, this was so stupid. It occurred to me that this really could just be a crazy coincidence. That my mother-in-law was dying right now and I was here in the rain trying to break into an elementary school. But then I noticed a tetherball stand, held down by a weighted tire. I ran over to it, flipped it on its side, and with all my might pushed it towards the base of where the window was. I got a good grip on it and started to climb. If I could balance on the top, I should just be able to reach the windowsill. The rain made my hands slippery, but I just focused on Aki, on Baba. I felt a bellow of thunder rumble through the sky and knew my time was running out. Just as I reached the top, I heard, "Daddy! Daddy!" Nikki was standing at the base of the tetherball pole, clearly scared, drenched in the rain. I called out to him, "Wait right there. I'll be BA dash." Bam! A crack of blinding white light, and then total black. I don't remember anything after that. Just some vague limbo of nothing. I woke up laid up in a hospital bed. My body was aching all over. Craning my neck around, I pieced together that I was in Mount Sinai Hospital in Queens. I had no idea how much time had passed. Nori and Nikki entered the room shortly after. My mind began to fill up with questions, but I was too weak to get them out. I just laid there in a daze. Nori started crying. Nikki stood like a statue, just staring at the floor. I felt like Lazarus, back from the dead. The first question I managed to ask was if Aki was still with us. She wasn't. A nurse joined us and explained to me that I had been struck by lightning on that tetherball pole. They'd need to run some additional testing that evening. My family doesn't know yet, but I am now suffering from electrical cardiomyopathy. My heart is fucked. As I write this, Nori and Nikki are asleep under the roof of our humble home, but I'm still here. I have no idea when I'll get out, and the more I look into my condition, the more I wonder if I even will. But this isn't the reason I'm sharing any of this is now. It's because of what just happened to me only a couple hours ago now. A man came into my room while I was sleeping, unannounced. He looked like a doctor, but didn't state himself as one. Simply, he placed his hand over mine. "Give it to someone you trust." Then he left. I could feel a soft plastic object left behind in my palm, but it was too dark to see. When suddenly a little display lit up. 8-bit text floated across the bright screen. FAFA. The text faded, leaving only my own bloodshot eyes gazing back at myself. Nicholas used to call me that. I feel so lost right now. I feel so hopeless. I don't know what any of this means, or what I am supposed to do. If anyone has gone through something like this, or know someone who has, please tell me. I feel so alone. I don't want to die. I love you, Nori. I love you, Nicholas. I used to have what I considered to be the perfect life. a tight-knit community of friends, a loving wife, a well-paying job as a pediatrician, and a warm and supportive family. My wife and I were planning to have children, wondering whether we should adopt or if one of us should carry the pregnancy. And my parents were excited at the prospect of grandchildren. And then one day, it all abruptly went to shit. The day started normal enough, did a few consultations without any trouble. But then, I gave a lollipop to a very brave little girl after her vaccine shot. And as her tiny fingers grabbed the stick, her fingertips brushed against my hand and sent white-hot pain through my whole arm. Taken aback, I quickly snatched away my hand, big eyes peering at me curiously. I played it off as static shock, but it kept happening. Coming back from work later that day, I leaned in to kiss my wife. The second our lips made contact, I reared back in pain. Kissing her felt like putting my mouth on hot iron. Seeing me in pain, panic seized her and she tried touching my arm in a comforting gesture. But again, the contact of her skin against mine sent a jolt of pain so violent I took several steps away from her. "See, call an ambulance." At the ER, the doctors were pretty much the same. If they wore gloves and only touched me for a short time, it was fine, like taking out a tray of baked goods with oven mitts on. The second naked skin made contact, however, the pain was unbearable. Their first thought was an allergic reaction. They asked me what I'd done or eaten that day, but I hadn't done anything out of the ordinary. I'd put on the same cologne, eaten the same lovingly cooked breakfast, drunk the same coffee at the same coffee shop, eaten the same sandwich from the same bakery, as it could be a matter of repeated exposure to the allergen the doctor prescribed some blood work. I anxiously waited for the results. That first night in bed with my wife was hell. Force of habit kept making us touch by accident. A playful and reassuring foot on my shin felt like having the skin of my leg peeled off. An attempt at hugging her ended with me jumping clear of the bed, wailing, her fingers brushing my face as she turned in her sleep. A white-hot iron poker dragged across my eyes. I ended up sleeping on the couch. The blood work came clean. A neurological issue was the doctor's next guess. They made me do an MRI. To no avail. Something in the staff's eyes turned off then. A light, I later learned, was their desire to help, extinguishing itself with a speed that meant it had never been very strong to begin with. It was obvious that they no longer believed me, that they thought my pain was psychological, somatic, and therefore, in their mind, no longer real. They weren't the only ones. Over the course of the following months, my wife's support waned until it turned into resentment. She took the fact that I couldn't touch anyone as a sign that I didn't want to touch her, that it was somehow a repressed homophobic part of me that was balking at the idea of starting a family together and manifested it that way, which was ridiculous. I hadn't dated men since high school, 15 years ago. I hadn't even had feelings for one beyond friendship. The first and only man I had fallen for had become my first girlfriend. My wife knew all that. It had even become an inside joke about how effective my gaydar was. It did nothing to appease her doubts. Sometimes, it made me want to scream at her, to yell, "What about in sickness and in health, huh?" But other times, I understood. What if she was right? And even if she wasn't, didn't she have the right to be angry? What if we had a child and I couldn't even hold it? Little by little, everyone around me left or I cut them off. My wife was the first to go, of course. I knew she had been cheating on me for a few weeks by the time I offered we divorced, leaving her hurt, but the look of relief on her face when I offered we end things hurt even more. I went back to my parents' house, looking for comfort, but even there I quickly felt unwelcome. My family had always been very tactile, my parents' attempt at comfort almost always involving a hug, a pat, or a comforting hand on my arm, all of which I kept evading. I tried meeting with my friends, but it always made me incredibly anxious. In summer, the heat made it hard to cover enough to avoid touch. In winter, it was easier, but even then, overheated interiors were hell. Worse than the pain was the constant fear of it. of a store clerk's fingertips brushing my palm when handing me back my change, of a stranger bumping into me, of a friend absent-mindedly leaning in to kiss my cheek. All those casual brushes of skin I had never thought about before that now brought pure agony. I felt like there was never enough layers of protection between myself and the searing pain other humans could inflict me. Unsurprisingly, my work too suffered from my new condition and subsequent paranoia. It was a bad look for a doctor to treat all of their patients like they were highly contagious. Always wearing gloves, keeping touches to the strict minimum. I tried to compensate by being very friendly, but it was like both children and parents could feel something was off. The kids got restless. The parents started to suspect I had some sort of problem. Add word of mouth into the mix and the number of patients coming to my office declined steadily. You would think eventually I'd build some pain tolerance. But if anything, it got worse. The oven mitts getting slimmer and slimmer. Soon I couldn't take the subway during rush hour, even clothed from head to toe, and could only go out when there were less people in the streets. I had to ask a colleague to put me on sick leave because I couldn't do consultations anymore. A year after the symptoms had first appeared, and I was at rock bottom. That's when I met Frank. I was at a cafe. So tired and miserable, I didn't look where I was going and bumped into him. I braced myself for misery, tensing every muscle, but nothing happened. Completely taken aback, I held the hand he offered me to get up, without thinking. I was already regretting my choice when our palms closed against one another, but then, nothing. No pain. "Hey, you all right?" he asked, but I just stayed there frozen, gaping at him, hand tightened around his, feeling the touch of another human being for the first time in a year. I had never realized how real of a phenomenon touch starvation was. Of course, as a physician, I knew it was a thing, but it was different to experience it myself. As horrible as the deprivation had been, the euphoria of being able to touch someone again was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. The rush of endorphins was such a high I almost swooned like a cartoon character. Coupled with our accidental bumping into, it seemed like a scene straight out of a romantic comedy. Love at first sight. Cue the violins and the platitudes about time stopping. "Are you okay?" Frank repeated. "Yes, I think you might be my soulmate" was not something I could just spring on the man. So having completely forgotten everything I'd painstakingly memorized in my teenage years about how to act around boys, I blurted, "I'm Nadia. Can I have your number?" Thankfully, that only made him laugh and blush a little, which was cute. He probably thought he was living something completely unreal. "You and me both, buddy." When I went back home, I realized just how ridiculous I'd been. What if this had all been a coincidence? What if I was just cured? I went to hug my mother that night. For the first time in a year, felt like being burned alive. After a good, long cry alone in the bathroom, I came to terms with the reality of the situation. It really was something about Frank, and only him. Unsurprisingly, we quickly started dating after that, which led to a lot of soul searching. I'm 33 and had been identifying as a lesbian for the last 13 years, so it was a massive shock to fall for a man. It made me queasy to think my ex-wife might have been right, that it might have been my subconscious trying to tell me life with her wasn't what I really wanted. Even if it had seemed so real, dating Frank was fine. For the most part, touching another human was a luxury I had clearly taken for granted. Every time we held hands or hugged was incredible after months without it. More intimate gestures were more complicated. Kissing was still mostly okay, but as much as I had missed the touch of another human, anything beyond that made me really uncomfortable. I tried a couple of times to psych myself up when we were kissing and his touches turned more pointed, but I just didn't feel any of the desire I'd felt for my ex-wife or girlfriends over the years. And I wasn't a teenager anymore. I knew what desire felt like for me, and I knew that I didn't feel it for Frank. But he was also the only human whose touch wasn't physically painful. At least Frank wasn't pushy. Of course, he was a bit bummed that intimacy between us was going at a snail pace, but he was content to wait. I had told him that I had a condition that made touch difficult, and he was very understanding. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait for as long as it takes, he told me. At the time, I was relieved and grateful to finally have someone in my life who was willing to give me the grace no one had given me in over a year. Now, however, I realized his words had a very different meaning. Personality-wise, Frank reminded me of some of my high school boyfriends before I'd realized I wasn't attracted to them. He was gentle, shy, not very manly. Actually, for some reason, he reminded me a little of my last boyfriend, who had, incidentally, turned to be my first girlfriend. Unlike her, though, Frank was very much a straight, cisgender man, and he would stay that way until he died. It sometimes led to friction. After dating women for so long, there were expectations I wasn't used to anymore. Not that dating women doesn't come with its own problems. Relationships are hard. At first, it was fun to get the princess treatment. Not paying at restaurants or having him open doors for me. It was novel. It stopped being cute when he told me I shouldn't wear heels because it made me look taller than him. Or that he was uncomfortable that I earned so much money as a doctor. He also seemed really upset by the fact that I had had a life before him, sentimental and sexual. But we always managed to iron things out. While this was happening, I kept thinking a lot about my first girlfriend, Aurora, and how different our relationship had been from the get-go, even when she'd still looked like a man. We'd broken up ages ago, but for some reason she kept popping up in my mind. After a bit, I realized I might have missed her. She wasn't the only one. Beyond the isolation that had come from my debilitating fear of touch, being a lesbian had been such an integral part of my identity for so long I felt deeply uncomfortable reconnecting with my friends now. I didn't feel like I belonged to the bars, cafes, or club I'd gone to. Didn't want to talk to the friends who's been at our wedding with my ex. I was all the more uncomfortable that I'd let a lot of biphobia fly from said friends over the years, and was now terrified of reaping what I'd sown. And then, one day, everything came crashing down. I was getting bubble tea at a little shop near my house when I heard a voice call behind me. Nadia, and there she was, Aurora. She was a vision, radiant, like her name. She looked exactly as I remembered her, and yet nothing like it. The numbers of piercings on her ears and face had doubled, and new tattoos had bloomed on her arms, some covering older, less well-made ones. Her style had gone from chaotic young goth to sophisticated older goth, and it suited her perfectly. Aurore, I whispered. I can't believe it's you. It's been ages. How have you been? I could have just said everything was fine, but it wasn't. Not really. And so, actually, this last year's been really weird. Aurora had always been into weird stuff. Astrology, the occult, witchcraft, that kind of things. That was one of the things that had contributed to our breakup. I used to be a bit of an asshole in uni, not really understanding the role belief played in people's lives, and how someone could believe in that crap while planning to work in healthcare. She, in turn, didn't understand why I was so strongly against something she viewed as harmless. We'd both learned since then. Aurora had certainly learned the hard way some beliefs are anything but harmless. I told her everything, and I mean everything. How I hadn't been able to touch people in over a year, how weird it felt that the only person I could touch was a man, and how strange it was to be in a straight relationship again. I was expecting Aurora to be surprised by my story and to reassure me on my sexual orientation. She was bi after all. What I did not expect was for her to look at me with a quietly horrified expression, the same kind I'd used a decade ago, when she'd offhandedly mentioned something her family had done that she hadn't realized was abusive yet. Nadia, what you're describing, it sounds a lot like a love potion. What? I laughed, but she wasn't joking. Well, some people call it a love potion, but it's a euphemism, really. It doesn't make you love the person who used it. It just makes you dependent of them. Aren't you a little old to believe in that stuff? I deal with that stuff for a living. Started as a side hustle, became quite profitable. Not here nor there. So what? I'm telling you about my very real problems, and you just see an opportunity to sell me some woo-woo shit? Are you planning to rope me into an MLM scheme next? Nadia, you had everything you wanted in life. Are you telling me that without that freak disease coming seemingly out of nowhere, you would have dropped your tight community, gorgeous and loving wife, and high-paying job for some random guy named Frank who's insecure about his height? Fuck. Aurora was right. This wasn't like me. Man or not, I had never been the type to fall in love with a stranger. And even if my preferences had suddenly changed, I had plenty of male friends and acquaintances who were way more my type than Frank would ever be. But why? How? I couldn't imagine why anyone would use a love potion on me, especially a man. There were thousands, if not millions, of women way more conventionally attractive than I'd ever be. Also, how had Frank even managed it? Didn't a potion need to be drunk in some way? How had a stranger managed to poison me? Listen, I need to get back to my day job, Aurora said, but give me your phone number and we'll get to the bottom of this. I took out my phone, the background picture a photo of Frank, and that was now starting to feel more unsettling than cute. My uneasiness was nothing compared to Aurora's reaction. Her face blanched when she saw it. Nadia, that's Francis Junit. That couldn't be. I knew Francis Junit. He'd been one of Aurora's friends pre-transition. He'd had a crush on me and had been incredibly obnoxious about it. Creepy, even. Aurora hadn't liked his behavior at the time. Even more so when her group of friends had started acting like it was fine. Just boys being boys. She'd completely cut ties with them after that, investing in her other friendships and our relationship, which had eventually helped her figure out who she was. What? There's no way. I would have recognized him. Would you? After that first incident, I made sure you wouldn't cross paths. Fuck. That was probably why I'd been thinking about Aurora so much in the last few months. She was the link between me and that creep I'd thought to be a stranger. I had kissed Francis Junit. I had very nearly had sex with Francis fucking Junit. I was gonna be sick. Can I make it stop? Aurora's expression became very somber and my stomach dropped. Yes, but it's not easy. I left the bubble tea shop, absent-mindedly running my hand through the new piece of jewelry around my neck in a self-soothing motion, and immediately called Frank. I demanded that we meet that night. He must have misread my tone, mistaking my nervousness for eagerness, because when I came to his Haussmannian apartment, everything was suspiciously clean and tidy. Even the gigantic mirror embedded in the wall was spotless. I could imagine why he'd cleaned it. I didn't let him kiss me or get near me. His touch might have not hurt, but it did not bring any comfort anymore. Instead, it made my skin crawl. Frank, I know about the love potion. The love? He stared at me with wide eyes. I think his surprise was genuine because the question he asked next definitely wasn't, "Babe, what are you talking about? Please, don't play dumb with me. I know you're the reason why I can't touch other people." "Oh, because you want to touch other people?" he said with a derisive tone and an ugly expression of dismissal. Despite not being attracted to him in that way, I had never found him ugly until that very moment. "Francis, I haven't been able to hug my parents in over a year because of you." The name gave him a pause. "So you remember me?" "Now I do, yeah. You've changed a lot, and I only saw you once or twice then." He'd sent me SMS for months, stalked me on Facebook, tried to get in contact with me through common acquaintances. But Aurora had shielded me from the worst of it, so I'd barely seen his face. Would it have changed anything if I had recognized him earlier? His brow pinched, his eyes watered. It was unsettling. What right did he have to cry? I've always loved you, Nadia. Always. But it was like you didn't even see me back then. You only had eyes for Nicholas. I shuddered when I heard the disgust in his voice, but did not correct him. I did not want him to know anything about Aurora's life now that he was out of it. And then I saw you again at the cafe I had just started working at, and it was like fate. He continued, oblivious to my discomfort. I knew I couldn't let you go again. That was 10 years ago, Francis. So, What's a decade in the face of true love? This isn't true love, I yelled, appalled. Of course it is. Now you finally need me like I need you. But I don't need you. Not really. I don't even love you. I just don't have a choice. You say that now, but if we spend more time together, then I'll just resent you more. Now I was the one crying, please, let me go. Move on. There is a way to do that. I know about the fucking ritual. I'm not doing it, he said, cutting me. The tears were still there, on his cheeks, glittering in the low light. But his voice and face were hard, cruel, determined. Now that he finally had what he wanted, he wasn't going to let go. The ritual to get rid of the effects of the potion was a week long. It required both the user and the recipient's willing involvement. And Francis would, indeed, never do it. I could see it clear as day. He might pretend he would, if I begged or screamed or cried enough, if I left long enough. But ultimately he would bargain, would postpone, would blame. He already was. And how long until my own energy and patience ran out? How long until I was too exhausted to leave? I see, I said quietly. I took hold of the pendant Aurora had given me, my fist shaking as I held it in a tight grip. I took one long look at the man who had taken nearly everything from me, the man who had poisoned and isolated me, just so that I would look his way. And with all the hatred I felt for him, I pulled the pendant quickly, as hard as I could. The band of the necklace went taut, then snapped, the metal clasp breaking more easily than it ought to. I don't know what I expected to happen. Aurora had been purposefully vague about what the results would be. The old and massive mirror behind Frank started rippling. I frowned, unsure what I was seeing. It was so dark. Had it been this dark earlier? All of a sudden, a gigantic hand came out of the reflecting surface. It closed around Frank's entire body, cutting his breath. I heard bones break. Not a drop of the blood that poured from his mouth made it to the ground as the hand behind the mirror retreated. It's been 2 months since then. Frank has been reported missing. Wherever his body is, I don't think the police will find it. I've resumed work and patients are slowly trickling in again. I could leave my parents' house, but I think I'll stay a little longer. It feels too good to get to hug them in the morning. I've also reconnected with my friends, giving them an edited version of what happened. One that involves drugs and an abusive relationship, but no love potion. I'm unbelievably grateful for their hugs of comfort. Maybe in a few months I'll contact my ex-wife again, explain what happened. I don't want her to feel guilty, but I think she deserves to know. Might save her a few hours of therapy, or add to it. Aurora and I are also meeting regularly. I don't know if it will turn into anything. For now, we're taking it easy. So yeah, if you have acquired a love potion, I strongly advise you to reconsider using it, because there are in fact 2 ways to reverse its effects. One is a week-long ritual for which both parties need to consent. They need to want, from the bottoms of their hearts, to get rid of the effects of the thing. The other, way faster and easier process is to kill the person who used the potion. And now that my story is out there, your target has way more chances of knowing what the effects of a love potion are and how to make them stop. You have been warned. You drive long enough, the asphalt starts to whisper back. Not the engine's thrum, not the tire's song. The road itself feels like it's thinking, breathing under your wheels. Like it knows you, remembers you.
3:17 nachts.
10 hours since I'd pulled my rig out of the Phoenix distribution yard, hauling a consignment of high-end electronics no one really needed, just moving from one sterile warehouse to another. Somewhere on US 93, deep in Nevada, heading north towards nothing much. The lines on the map in my head had softened, edges blurred like old watercolor left in the sun. The radio had surrendered to a torrent of static around one. I kept it crackling anyway. It was a kind of company, a reminder that somewhere, beyond this bubble of light my headlights punched into the desert night, other signals existed. Other people. I'd been scanning for a truck stop, any sign of life, for what felt like the last 2 hours. Either I drifted through one in a trance or it was another phantom on the atlas. Wouldn't be the first time the highway conjured an oasis only to snatch it away. When the faint, distant glow of a sign finally materialized through the heat haze rising from the cooling asphalt, I almost missed the turnoff, wrenched the wheel hard, the rig groaning onto the dusty access ramp like its life, and mine, depended on it. The sign, a battered metal rectangle, proclaimed Oasis Fuel ATS in faded, peeling paint. But the building behind it was dark, no welcoming lights from the windows. I parked beside one of the ancient-looking pumps. No other vehicles, just my 18-wheeler and the long, distorted shadow it cast in the weak moonlight. The overhead lights above the pumps flickered erratically, emitting a high-pitched, electrical whine that vibrated in my fillings. The desert wind, usually a constant presence, was eerily still here. The door to the station store side opened as if on its own accord. I stepped inside. No one. No clerk behind the chipped Formica counter. No music.
No welcoming chime.
Just the cloying scent of industrial cleaner and something else beneath it. Something old and metallic, like rust and dried blood. Anybody here? My voice sounded thin, swallowed by the silence. No answer. I needed the restroom. It was towards the back, past a dusty rack of sun-bleached postcards and bags of jerky that looked petrified. The door, marked with a faded, genderless stick figure, creaked open with a reluctance that felt almost human. Inside, a single fluorescent tube spasmed on the ceiling, a manic, buzzing strobe that made the grimy porcelain fixtures seem to jump and stutter, glitching, like the world was trying to buffer. One of the 2 stall doors was closed, and from behind it someone was humming. Low, slow, deeply off-key. And the strangest, coldest thing, I knew the melody, but I couldn't place it, couldn't grasp how or why it was familiar. The bathroom was at the back of the small building, past a shelf of sunglasses that looked like they'd been there since the 70s and petrified-looking meat snacks. The door groaned open as if reluctant to admit me. Inside, the single fluorescent light above the cracked mirror was having a seizure, buzzing erratically, then stuttering into near darkness, then flaring again. It was like watching a failing EKG. One of the 2 stalls was shut, and someone inside was humming, a low, slow, discordant tune. And the most unsettling part, I recognized the melody, but I couldn't fathom from where. The restroom was in the rear, beyond a display of sunglasses so old they might have been fashionable twice and jerky that appeared to have fossilized. The door opened with a groan, as if it resisted entry. Inside, the lone fluorescent fixture above the cracked mirror was spasming, buzzing violently, then stuttering into semi-darkness, then flaring up again. It made the grimy space feel as if it were caught in a failing projector. One of the 2 stalls was closed, and from within there was humming, low, unhurried, and jarringly out of tune. And the most peculiar, chilling thing, I knew that tune, but I couldn't recall how. The stall was at the back, beyond a rack of sunglasses that looked like props from a bygone era and meat sticks that appeared to have mummified. The door protested with a groan when I pushed it open. Inside, the single fluorescent light above the chipped basin was in its death throes, buzzing erratically, then faltering into near blackness, then flaring with renewed, desperate effort. It gave the cramped, unclean space the feel of a failing electrical system on the verge of collapse. One of the 2 stall doors was closed, and from behind that door, someone was humming, a low, slow, and unsettlingly off-key melody. And strangest of all, I knew the tune. But for the life of me, I couldn't remember where I'd heard it. It wasn't the humming itself that disturbed me so profoundly. It was the song. It sounded like a distorted version of Wayfaring Stranger, that old, mournful folk song my grandfather used to play on his harmonica on quiet evenings. back before his mind started to wander. Except this rendition was wrong. The notes were bent, sour, like someone trying to reconstruct it from a fragmented, corrupted memory. The longer I listened, the more unsettling it became. As if the tune itself was a parasite humming me, I tapped on the stall door. Silence at first, then, "Be out in a moment." The voice sounded like mine, not just similar, identical, down to the slight rasp from too many hours of road dust and black coffee. I swallowed something acrid and waited, pretending to check messages on my phone with fingers that trembled uncontrollably. The humming stopped. Then the stall door creaked open. He stepped out, denim jacket frayed at the cuffs, faded baseball cap pulled low. Same exhausted lines etched around eyes I saw reflected in every grimy truck stop mirror from Barstow to Cheyenne. It was me, not a passing resemblance, it was me. Except his hands were shaking violently, and his face, it held an expression of profound, almost beatific relief. "Oh, thank heavens," he said, his voice a low murmur. "You found this place too, then?" I took an involuntary step back, my heel hitting the edge of the sink. "What in the blazes is this?" I managed, though it came out as a strangled whisper. He smiled, not a creepy smile, a genuinely relieved one. "I thought it was only me," he said, stuck, but I guess it wasn't. Not really. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, like someone jolted awake from a deep, disturbing dream, unsure if they wanted to return to it. He stepped forward, raised a hand my hand, and reached for my shoulder, as if to steady himself, or to pull me into whatever abyss he'd crawled out of. I didn't wait to find out. I shoved him back, harder than I intended. He stumbled, hitting the stall door with a dull thud, a strange look of resignation on his face, as if he'd done this before, as if this scene had already been enacted countless times. I bolted, didn't look back, didn't want to see what expression he wore as I fled. I slammed the restroom door open so hard it bounced off the peeling wall. Cold desert air hit me like a physical blow. But something was wrong. The lot wasn't the same. The pumps were a different color, a sickly pale yellow instead of the deep, rusted green the first remembered from moments before. The flickering sign above the station building didn't say Oasis Fuel ATS anymore. It was a blank, white sign with crudely painted black block letters. "Welcome, no price for gas. No familiar logo." And my rig, my Peterbilt, it wasn't mine. Same model, yes. Same distinctive chrome grille. Same small dent on the passenger side fender from that incident in Flagstaff. But the decal on the door was different. A stylized raven in flight, above the words Nomad Freightways. Never worked for them. Never even heard of them. The cab door was unlocked. My boots clanged on the metal step like hammer blows in the sudden silence. Inside, the CB radio was on, crackling with static. I don't remember turning it on, but it was on. And from the speaker, or maybe from somewhere underneath it, came that same broken, off-key melody. Low, tinny, distorted. There was a small, framed photograph tucked into the sun visor. My old Labrador Buster as a puppy. But he wasn't a puppy in this photo. He looked ancient, grizzled, his eyes clouded. And then, as I stared, the image seemed to shift, superimposing the puppy image over the old one, then back again like a corrupted digital file. Like memory itself was misfiled, unstable. I turned to the small, circular mirror clipped above the dashboard, checked my face, looked fine, tired, lips chapped from the dry air. Still me. But then the reflection blinked. I hadn't. I stared back. We held each other's gaze like that, me and the thing pretending to be me in the glass, for maybe 3 full, heart-stopping seconds. Then I heard it, the humming again. But this time it wasn't from the radio. It was behind me, right behind my seat. I twisted around fast. The sleeper cab was empty. Just my duffel bag, my battered coffee thermos, my logbook. But when I looked back at the mirror, he was there. The other me, only not. Paler, eyes brighter, lit with a feverish intensity, like he hadn't slept in weeks and thrived on it. Mouth curled into a knowing, almost triumphant smirk. He mouthed something, 2 words I could read clearly on his lips. Still here? That's when I knew I wasn't going to make it to sunrise on this road. I drove, didn't think, just gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles ached, as if it were the only thing tethering me to sanity. The highway stretched out, an endless black ribbon under a starless sky, but it stopped making sense. Signs began to repeat. Rest area 10 miles. Then, 5 minutes later, rest area 10 miles. Again and again. The same faded, peeling billboard for a long-defunct roadside zoo in Arizona, even though I was supposed to be heading into the Rockies. I passed a diner with a distinctive neon sign, a winking cowboy that I was sure I'd passed 3 states ago. Same flickering lights, same battered pickup truck parked out front. Even, I swore, the same couple arguing heatedly in a window booth. Nothing was linear anymore. Everything looped, folded back on itself. Hours passed, or minutes, or maybe days. Time became elastic, meaningless. Eventually, through the haze of exhaustion and dread, I saw lights again. Another roadside stop. Different sign this time, barely legible. Haven. Looked cleaner than the others. Newer, almost normal. I pulled in, not out of hope, just numb resignation. The restroom was brighter, cleaner, soap in the dispenser. I splashed cold water on my face, watched it drip into the porcelain basin, took a long, shuddering breath. Then I looked up into the mirror. He was still there, my reflection, not humming now, just smiling. Faint, patient, knowing smile, like he'd already climbed inside my skin, like he was just waiting for some final signal. And I think I know what it is. I'm terrified to fall asleep in the cab tonight, because I think that's what he's waiting for, that final surrender. The drive back from my grandfather's place in southern Utah was long, cutting across desolate stretches of highway. We'd stopped at a dusty roadside antique fair near Ely, a sprawling collection of stalls under the brutal Nevada sun. Grandpa collected old tools and scientific instruments, while he haggled over a rusty sextant. My eyes, restlessly scanning a table laden with tarnished silver and forgotten trinkets, fell upon a small, heavy brass object. It was an astrolabe or something very much like it. Intricate, interlocking discs covered in strange symbols and celestial charts I didn't recognize. It felt strangely cold to the touch, despite the desert heat. Something about it called to me. It was cheap. I bought it, tucking it into my backpack, largely forgetting about it. That was months ago. Now, hauling a load of medical supplies towards Denver, the memory surfaced as my music cut out due to poor signal on this godforsaken stretch of highway, the one I'd rerouted to avoid a reported chemical spill further north. This road felt older, less traveled. The silence after the music died was profound. Maybe an hour into this detour, the restlessness from too little sleep the night before, coupled with the lingering unease from that first oasis stop encounter weeks ago, had my eyelids feeling like lead. Hope flared briefly when I passed a large, faded red sign. Oasis stop, fuel and EATS, 2 miles. My heart sank. That sign. I remembered it now. If I'd actually scanned the battered rectangle properly that first time, some primal part of my brain might have connected the dots sooner. Pulling in, I searched the spaces. Empty again. Stretching, I tried to shake off the déjà vu. This station being remote, the lack of other vehicles wasn't initially alarming. The building looked a little more run down than I remembered, but maybe that was just my memory. It was fairly small, for pumps, a few parking spots lining a weathered wooden fence, all overshadowed by dark, silent pines that crowded too close. Sitting in the silent cab, my mind registered the absence of the watch's soft tick. Grandpa had supposedly fixed it, put in a new battery, but it was dead again. Reaching into my backpack on the passenger seat for my wallet, my hand brushed against the cold metal of the astrolabe I'd forgotten I'd packed. Pulled it out. The intricate brass dials seemed to gleam faintly in the dim cab light. Strange. Part of me wanted to unbuckle its small leather strap, examine its complex gears. But the rational side urged me towards the red and white station building for caffeine. As I was about to switch off the engine, a figure shuffled past my truck, heading towards the station door. A woman, youngish, pushing a light blue stroller. The image felt eerily, unpleasantly familiar. Refocusing on my immediate need, I traded the astrolabe for my wallet and followed. Entering through the grimy glass doors, I was met by the same stale, Swedish chemical aroma. With a specific energy drink in mind, I made a beeline for the coolers, passing the woman. She was studying a bag of chips, the stroller parked beside her. Apart from us, the only other person was a cashier, this time a young woman with dark, Gothic-style makeup and multiple piercings, looking utterly bored. Avoiding prolonged eye contact, I grabbed my drink. As I deliberated over a snack, another person entered, the door chime announcing his arrival. Too engrossed in my choice, I didn't look up until a balding man, reeking of stale cigarettes and something acrid like gasoline, planted himself uncomfortably close, also scanning the shelves. His proximity, the foul smell, made me lightheaded. I grabbed a random packet of crackers and moved quickly to the counter. Every step I took, I felt his eyes on me. I didn't turn fully, but in my periphery, he remained in the same spot, staring. With all the hairs on my neck prickling, I awkwardly paid, mumbled a thanks to the cashier, and hastened out. Reaching the relative safety of my truck, my body sagged with relief. Cracking open the energy drink, I scanned the parking lot. My truck was the only vehicle. How had those three, the mother, the cashier, the balding man, gotten here? No cars, no houses nearby, just miles of empty highway and desert scrub. That awkwardness was instantly replaced by a small, cold well of confused fear. My mind knew something was wrong, even if my senses couldn't pinpoint it. Not wanting to linger, I buckled up and pulled out, determined to make good time. I'd been back on the road for at least an hour, maybe more, subconsciously counting the few cars that passed. Initially, they'd whizzed by every few minutes. Now, the road was utterly empty. I didn't think I'd seen another vehicle since leaving that last Oasis stop. The energy drink had worn off, and my bladder was protesting. Excellent timing, another sign. Oasis stop, 2 miles. Again, pulling in, pick of the bays once more. Parking in the same spot as before, my body tensed as I reached for the door handle. Just as I switched off the engine, a shadow crossed my driver's side window. The young mother with the light blue stroller was making her way towards the station door. It was too close a call. I waited until she was inside, then reluctantly entered, heading straight for the restroom, passing the same bored-looking Gothic cashier. This time, I paid more attention to the layout. It was identical to the first Oasis stop, the one with my doppelganger. Breaking the seal I'd held for what felt like an age, a faint chime from the front of the store was quickly masked as I flushed and left the stall. Making my way back to the main floor, I almost collided with the balding man, standing motionless just inches from the restroom door. Apologizing, I sidestepped him quickly, keeping my head down, and shuffled towards the coolers, making the opposite drink choice from before. Paying, offering another awkward smile and thanks to the cashier. That pit in my stomach deepened. Unsure why, my natural instinct was to check over my shoulder as I pushed open the station door. My head turned, and my eyes locked with the balding man, still standing motionless by the restroom door. Had he followed me from the first place? Or was this a twin? Even from that distance, I could see deep into his dilated pupils, feel that same disturbing sensation of being evaluated triggering my freeze response. Time stood still as he watched me attempt to rationalize his recurring presence. Suddenly, his body twisted with a mechanically fluid motion, and he strode towards me, gliding down the aisle with no apparent effort. Panic erupted. Without thinking, my body was dragging me back to my truck. Half tripping as I dropped from the curb, my eyes were fixed on the station door. Some small part of my mind tried to justify his actions, but the primal portion overpowered it, screaming one order: run. Flying into the driver's seat and flooring it out of the parking lot, my eyes were still locked on the entrance as he burst forth, his gaze sweeping the now vacant concrete. As our eyes met again, his were almost gleeful, his otherwise blank expression tracing my acceleration back onto the minimal safety of the highway. I was done. Who knew how long this road was, how much further it stretched? I needed to go back. You're always told to keep your eyes on the road. Sensible advice. But those words didn't register as I hysterically scanned every vaguely human-shaped shadow among the Joshua trees on either side of the desolate highway. It wasn't like I could hit another vehicle. Mine seemed to be the only one inhabiting this endless stretch. Interspersed between my wild glances, I caught myself subtly examining the road ahead. For a couple of minutes, it was flat, expressionless gray. Then I hit a large bump. Checking my rear view, it seemed the concrete itself had bulged upwards, like a buried pillar, not a speed bump. Why would a highway out here even have speed bumps? That single instance quickly became 3. Then for each rising higher, some now jagged columns as tall as my cab, forcing me to swerve violently to avoid collision. Hitting the brakes, almost giving myself whiplash, I stopped inches from a spire-like cylinder of concrete that pierced the sky above. Whatever force was at play here definitely didn't want me turning back. With the countless new roadblocks, moving forward seemed impossible too. But checking my rear view again offered a sliver of perverse logic to this minefield. The road I'd just perilously traversed, the section behind me, was now as flat and bleak as it had been before the pillars erupted, in stark contrast to the impassable chaos ahead. Making the only decision I could, I executed a tight U-turn, the rig groaning in protest, and headed back, deeper into this road's unassuming, treacherous facade. Passing that same Oasis Stop sign again, 2 miles. I couldn't tell if it was the road spitting out another slowly degrading copy or if it was, in fact, the same one I'd just been chased from. It didn't matter. My only goal now was an exit, any exit from this looping nightmare. Turning what felt like the only real corner in an hour, though my hysterics made timekeeping impossible, my mind paused as my eyes traced up a tall, weathered red sign. Oasis Stop, now entering. Hoping, praying I just hallucinated the previous instances due to exhaustion. I begged my eyes to show me anything other than that same building as its shape came into view between the sparse, twisted Joshua trees. An identical structure emerged, offset only by its overtly decrepit nature. Unlike the previous stations, this one was undeniably abandoned, neglected for decades, instilling a vividly sharp paranoia of crossing a threshold from which there'd be no return. Slowing to a crawl, the parking area was devoid of vehicles. The stained concrete around the pumps, coupled with speckled mold patches, would have surely put off any normal person, if any still existed out here. Half my mind questioned if I was just misremembering minor details, if all remote desert stations just happened to look similar. That rational half was quickly bypassed by the sudden emergence of a person. Striding into view from a gap between a slanted, rotten wooden fence and a rusted tire pressure pump was the woman. Alarm bells screamed as her appearance was unmistakably identical to the lady I'd encountered hours, or was it days, ago? Something about her walk was off. The slight limp was more pronounced now, her reliance on the stroller absolute, as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. She looked tired, ancient. Each step was labored. Still, with my gaze fixed on her, I mounted the broken curb with a jarring scrape, cursing under my breath. Surprisingly, on this remote stretch, with my truck undoubtedly overlaying any ambient desert sounds. She didn't so much as flinch or look my way. Whatever commotion I made seemingly never reached her ears, or, more accurately, didn't elicit any deviation from her current, singular path. Stopping and assessing the damage, scratched alloys, scuffed passenger side wheel, I felt a wave of despair. With enough occupying my mind already, this just sank to the bottom of a well of issues I had no interest in fixing. Still crouching, wiping the sweat from my brow, I again felt those eyes on me. Standing and scanning the lifeless parking spaces, there was no one and nothing in my immediate view. Those same malicious beams only sought to reaffirm their owner's animosity. Expecting to find myself face to face with them the moment I'd stood up, I still couldn't put a form to that feeling as I tried to focus on what was currently pressing. Re-entering my truck and starting the ignition, hoping to get off this cursed loop, my pulse slowly relaxed, back to a baseline, leaving an empty pit in its wake. Keeping my head trained on that building's perimeter as I passed, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, other than its extreme state of decay. Leaving that scene behind, I permitted myself a final, hesitant check of my rearview mirror to finally, fully settle my nerves. Seeing only the back of the dilapidated building and the road's desolate scrubland perimeter, I was mere milliseconds away from refocusing on the road ahead, when an all-too-familiar figure lurched from the shimmering heat haze opposite the station. The balding man. He simply smiled as the distance between us crumbled away in the mirror, leaving his visage burned into my mind. We were merely a breath apart. If he'd willed it so, I'd have found out why he was infusing me with a fear tantamount to a trapped coyote facing a circling vulture. The day was beginning to fade as I could faintly see my truck's headlights beaming down on the road ahead. With them springing to life, my own eyes had started to waver. Who knows how long I'd been driving, but that incessant orange fuel light had been warning me of an impending stall for what felt like an eternity. Just my luck, a lone red sign, identical to the others, peeking from between two skeletal, dead Joshua trees. Oasis stop, 2 miles. 2 miles until I'd see him again. The balding man, or his decaying counterpart. I didn't want to stop, didn't even want to drop my speed below 30, though without any fuel, I'd soon be walking. I don't even recall how many miles I had in the tank before embarking on this trip or what time, what day I left, but I could feel I'd been driving for a heck of a lot longer than my satellite navigation, now blank, had ever suggested possible. Like a grain of sand atop a dune, those thoughts were blowing away as the building came into view. Decrepit was too kind a word. Peeling paint, loose siding tiles, some of which had already crumbled to the now mossy and overgrown concrete drive, painted a picture of utter neglect. Most of the windows were smashed or boarded up, with a litter of small glass shards pooling at the main entrance. Even a small section of the roof had seemingly collapsed, the building itself sagging heavily to one side. I'd have assumed it was long abandoned if not for a shape trudging slowly within its innards. Reaching a stop to ascertain who or what was still accessing that husk. There she was, emerging from my right as she had the countless times I'd visited these cursed mirages. As the station had decayed, she too was deteriorating. Limping from between the now rotten and collapsed fence sections, she held onto that now bent and disjointed stroller as if it were part of her, and from my angle she might as well have been. Dragging what seemed to be her bruised and mangled right leg, she stared forward through barely open, clouded eyes. Her one and only continuous goal, to reach an unknown ending within that ruin. Silently watching my body, as it had when she passed my truck previously, fixed me in place as it wrestled with the idea of attempting to offer assistance versus succumbing to the primal urge to flee. The small, tarnished brass astrolabe lay on the passenger seat, its dials still. Hesitantly checking all corners of the parking lot, the shattered windows of the station, and the darkening gaps between each tall, skeletal tree from within my vaguely safe cocoon, I mustered all the remaining courage I had. My hand strayed to the astrolabe. To my shock and amazement, the pump, though rusted and leaning, still seemed connected. The dial didn't flicker to life, but I heard the faint gurgle of liquid as I inserted the nozzle. Though the handle was stiff, I managed to get a flow. Keeping tabs on my surroundings, I filled up on whatever dregs that pump had left, saying a silent prayer that this would be enough to get me to somewhere else. Anywhere else. For a moment I was prepared to climb back into the truck and flee, but some morbid curiosity, some desperate need for an answer, even a terrible one, made me step towards the shattered doorway of the station building. I'm thankful I didn't take too long to collect my thoughts, as only a couple of steps from my truck, a panel from the station's sagging overhead cover came crashing down onto my passenger side door with a deafening shriek of tortured metal. Smashing the window and taking my wing mirror was far better than taking me out. With that depressing thought, I pressed on into the dying building. Its interior, though a shadowy echo of the building's previous iterations, was only slightly altered by the cascade of fallen shelves, roof panels, and part of a collapsed wall that now lay scattered across the broken, dusty tiles. Weeds pushed up through cracks in the concrete. The air was thick with the smell of decay, dust, and something else, that faint, metallic, coppery scent from the very first encounter. The lady, or what was left of her, still leaning against her battered stroller, threatening to meld with it, stood motionless beside a toppled shelf. Worn packaging and surrounding debris covered her feet, but I could make out a faded Lay's logo from a packet her vacant gaze was fixed upon. In a similar manner, each shelf, once adorned with a selection of snacks and drinks, now lay bare or broken. Some small remnants had collapsed to the cold tiles, the crumbling facade of this place ever having been used by any actual person only now dawning on me with full force. Walking over to the counter, I expected to see the Gothic cashier, or her equivalent in this decayed iteration. With everything that had been happening, I'd almost forgotten about her. But she wasn't visible through the dirty, cracked plastic hygiene screen. Not wanting to touch the eons of grime clinging to its surface, I peered closer. The same rusty metal containers and haphazard selection of debris, shelves, and part of the wall covered the floor, though in amongst those was another shape. Lying face down, I could make out the form of a person. By the tattered remains of a green apron and a shock of black hair matted with dust and something darker, I could tell who it was. Although part of me wanted to jump the counter and check, I knew I was far too late to offer any help. Her twisted body was mashed with the broken chair she'd likely been sitting in each time I'd sauntered over to pay. Her limbs were broken, fused with the legs of the chair, as if she had conformed to the convulsing, rapid aging of my vicinity. Shooting down my spinal column and back up my brain stem, another feeling overwhelmed my pity for the crumpled shape. That same projection of malice hit me like a runaway semi. In my investigation of the building's interior, I had failed to keep tabs on my surroundings. With an almighty crunch from behind, I was sent hurtling into the perimeter wall of the building. A pain so unbearably hot welled up like a geyser from my right thigh and lower leg as I instinctively gripped it to soften the throb. Rapidly blinking through tear-covered eyes, I saw the balding man. He too had aged as the building around us had, looking near 90 in contrast to his previous middle-aged appearance. His wrinkled skin and frail appendages were a vast inverse from the force he'd just applied to my now battered leg. His slender frame lunged forward again, all whilst that venomous glare persisted. In my foresight, or perhaps just blind luck, I rolled to my left, only just dodging his leap, and attempted to clamber back to my feet. The pain in my leg was agonizing, but worse was the lack of feeling in my ankle and foot. In the way you get pins and needles after a limb falls asleep, I could tell my foot was making contact with the ground, but I could in no way control it. It dragged uselessly. Limping to my feet, I dragged my crippled body to the only safe place left, my truck, all the whilst that man followed suit. He never spoke, didn't even groan, just pursued like a starving, ancient predator that had finally cornered its prey. Throwing myself in and hitting the gas with all the force I could muster through that twisted limb, The vehicle sputtered off the overgrown drive and back onto the road. Evidently, I'd caught some glass on my frantic exit. At least one of my tires was punctured as my body felt each jarring bump. I just have to hope our damaged frames could hold out. I'm beat. I don't know if it's the blood loss from my leg or just the cumulative effect of traversing this accursed road for what feels like half an eternity. I've done what I can to crudely bandage my ankle with strips torn from my shirt, and though I'm no doctor, it looks and feels like an open fracture, if not a clean break. My vehicle is in a bad way too. That falling panel and whatever debris I drove over clearly did a number on the passenger side. Coupled with that, I'm currently running on fumes, the fuel needle buried deep in the red. My eyes and leg are screaming for a moment of rest, which I fear I'm rapidly closing in on, one way or another. Weave the truck and I stopped just before a sharp bend in the road. Through my flickering, damaged headlights, I can see the vague outline of a long, thin signpost, though the sign itself is obscured by shadow. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. Silence, absolute and terrifying, crashed down again. With my truck's battery now as dead as its fuel tank, I can see him, just down the road, illuminated faintly by the distant, wrong-colored moon that seems to hang perpetually over this place. He's a good half a mile away and is slowly, laboriously dragging himself towards me, one distorted limb at a time. The balding man or what's left of him. And here I am, slumped in the driver's seat, listening to that poor facsimile of a human drag its broken feet across each uneven bump in the cracked asphalt. The astrolabe sits on the seat beside me, its brass cool under my trembling fingers. With my ankle, what good would running do? I'd only end up back at that all-too-familiar sign, signaling another agonizing lap of these cursed lanes. I don't know what he wants, but just like the other two mindless husks I encountered, some part of me knows he's nothing but a puppet, strings pulled by the road itself, or whatever intelligence resides within its repeating loops. That astrolabe I found, it got some use after all, if only as a paperweight for my despair. But as the figure outside draws closer, its breath rattling like stones in a tin can, I pick it up. The dials, usually spinning freely, are now locked, pointing, not north, not to any constellation I recognize, pointing off the road into the impenetrable darkness of the desert scrub. If you find this vehicle, this tarnished brass instrument lying in the discarded remnants of my journey, vacantly leaning off an unassuming road that isn't on any map, try not to make the same mistake I did. Don't stop. Don't engage. Don't try to understand the tune the road hums. Or, if not, maybe you'll see me at the next oasis stop, scanning the coolers, forever deliberating over 2 drinks, my reflection blinking back when I don't. Just another thrall tethered to this everlasting road, searching, desperately, for an exit unattainable. Unless this astrolabe isn't just pointing. Maybe it's offering a path. One last desperate turn. I never learned her real name. That's just one of the unsettling facts that clings to me now, like the residue of a dream you can't quite shake. The first time I saw her, she was tucked into a corner armchair in the university library cafe, sketching intently in a small, worn, leather-bound notebook. She wasn't interacting with anyone, just utterly absorbed, pencil flying across the page, capturing something. Patterns mostly intricate and interlocking, vaguely unsettling but undeniably compelling. She had this aura of quiet intensity, a self-contained stillness that drew the eye. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, strands escaping to frame a face that seemed both young and anciently weary. She'd occasionally look up, her gaze sweeping the room with sharp, assessing brown eyes before returning to her notebook, like she was cataloging the mundane world while inhabiting another entirely. She wore an old, faded olive-green field jacket, the kind that looked like it held stories of its own. I ordered my latte and was waiting near the pickup counter when I realized I was staring. She looked up, met my gaze directly, No surprise, no reaction, just a level, knowing look, the kind that says I see you watching me. Normally, I'd fumble, look away, pretend to check my phone. This time, I just couldn't. I felt pinned by her stare. She didn't smile or frown, just held my gaze for a beat too long. Then slowly, deliberately, returned to her sketching, a tiny, almost imperceptible quirk at the corner of her lip. Felt less like dismissal and more like acceptance, like she'd expected it. When my latte arrived, I deliberately chose a table within her line of sight, pretending to read a textbook. I'm not subtle. I'm sure she knew. I'd steal glances. She'd continue sketching, occasionally pausing to look thoughtfully out the window, her pencil tapping a silent rhythm against the paper. I'd never been so intensely aware of another person's presence. After maybe 15 minutes of this silent observation, she closed her notebook, stood up, and walked directly over to my table. She didn't ask, just pulled out the opposite chair and sat down, placing the leather-bound notebook on the table between us. Up close, her eyes were even sharper, intelligent and unnervingly perceptive. Her posture radiated a calm confidence, as if this unexpected intrusion was perfectly normal. My brain stalled. Years of social awkwardness kicked in, and I let out a short, nervous laugh.
I manager.
She didn't laugh back, just studied my face for a moment. You kept looking, she stated simply, not accusingly, just factually.
I'm Anya.
Over the next few weeks, Anya became a fixture in my life, yet remained an enigma. We fell into an easy routine meeting at the library cafe, taking long, aimless walks through the city at night, sharing cheap takeout on park benches. We talked for hours, but often about abstract things, patterns in nature, the feeling of old buildings, dreams. She'd share fragments of her life, cities she'd lived in briefly, landscapes she'd sketched, but always vaguely, without specific names or timelines. It felt like assembling a mosaic with half the tiles missing. Every detail she offered only deepened the mystery, made me want to understand the parts she kept hidden. I found myself texting her late at night, just to see the delivered checkmark turn into read. She'd often reply instantly, sometimes with an obscure song link, sometimes just with still drawing. I'd stay awake, trading messages, sacrificing sleep just to keep the connection going, feeling pulled into her orbit, like being near her was significant, even if I didn't know why. It felt like she saw something in me, had chosen me for some unspoken reason, and questioning it felt like rejecting a rare, strange gift. One evening, I was crashed on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, catching up with my friend Mark, rattling on about work frustrations, weekend plans, the usual mundane stuff. We were laughing about some terrible movie he'd seen when, almost unconsciously, I started to tell him about this fascinating, mysterious woman I'd met. Her name is Anya, and she dash. Suddenly, she was there, standing silently beside the couch, having moved from the kitchen without a sound. Her hand was outstretched, palm up, demanding the phone. Her face was devoid of expression, but her eyes were chips of ice. Startled, I handed over the phone automatically. Before I could fully process it, she'd thumbed the end call button, cutting Mark off mid-word. She stared down at the dark screen for a moment, her knuckles white where she gripped the phone. Then she looked at me, her gaze pinning me to the couch. "No one," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "can know about me. Understand? No one." Her intensity was frightening. It wasn't a request. It was a command layered with unspoken threat. I just nodded slowly, my throat dry. She held my gaze for another long moment, then placed the phone carefully back on the coffee table, her fingers brushing mine, the touch surprisingly cold. "If anyone knows," she added softly, looking away towards the window, "if they find out, they will come. Just that." "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who will come?" She wouldn't answer, just shook her head slightly, a curtain falling behind her eyes. The subject was closed. I didn't push. Something in her stance, a sudden vulnerability beneath the iciness, warned me that pressing further would be a serious mistake. Later that week, trying to pretend things were normal, I was chatting with my coworker, Sam. He asked if I was seeing anyone. Trying to be funny, playing it cool, I said, yeah, sort of, seeing this amazing artist. She's brilliant, but, kind of intense, likes her privacy. I laughed it off, told Sam to keep it under wraps. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt a lurch in my stomach, that cold feeling again, like breaking an invisible rule, like speaking her existence even vaguely had consequences. That night, it was late, maybe 1 a.m. We were at my apartment, sprawled on the couch, watching some black and white sci-fi movie on low volume. The only light came from the screen, casting flickering blue shadows. Anya's head rested on my shoulder, her usual intense focus softened, almost peaceful. I felt a surge of affection, a sense of impossible luck. Her laugh, when it came in response to something absurd on screen, was low and genuine, vibrating through me. Impulsively, I leaned in and kissed her. It started gently, but quickly deepened, that familiar magnetic pull taking over, the rest of the world fading away. Suddenly, a low humming sound started, not from the TV, not from outside. It seemed to emanate from the front door itself. A deep, resonant vibration, almost below the threshold of hearing, but felt intensely in the chest. We both froze, pulling apart. Anya's eyes locked on mine, wide with a stark terror I'd never seen in her before. She listened, head tilted, utterly still. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me, silently screaming danger. We didn't breathe. The humming intensified, making the floorboards vibrate faintly. Then came a soft, insidious slithering sound against the outside of the door, like fine sand pouring or dry leaves skittering across the wood. Anya's hand clamped over my mouth, her fingers ice cold and trembling against my skin. This wasn't her usual collected self. This was raw fear. My eyes shot to the door. The humming seemed to seep through the wood. Anya's hand pressed harder against my mouth. Her eyes pleaded with me not to make a sound. I felt trapped, my heart hammering against her palm. My gaze flickered towards the fireplace, where I kept an old, heavy wrought iron poker propped against the bricks, more decorative than functional, but solid. Slowly, carefully, I eased away from Anya, pointing towards the fireplace, then back at the door, raising my eyebrows in a question. She gave the slightest shake of her head, eyes still wide with terror, but staying passive felt impossible. Ignoring her silent plea, I slid off the couch and crept towards the fireplace. The poker felt heavy, cold in my hand. The humming vibrated through the metal. I moved towards the door, poker held low, ready. Every step felt weighted, the air thick as water. I stopped a few feet from the door, listening. The slithering sound continued, rhythmic, dry. I risked a glance at the peephole. Darkness. The hallway light must be out. Or blocked. A shadow shifted under the door, a brief occlusion of the thin line of light from the living room. Something was crouched low right outside. I stepped back silently, pressing myself against the wall beside the door. The slithering stopped. The humming pulsed, a nauseating thrum. My ears strained in the silence. Then, a whisper. Right through the wood, papery thin, multi-voiced. "We know she is here. Open." My blood ran cold. It wasn't one voice. It sounded like dozens of dry voices whispering in unison. I wanted to yell, to challenge them, but Anya's terrified face flashed in my mind. I stayed silent, gripping the poker until my knuckles were white. Minutes crawled by. Maybe 5. Maybe an eternity. The humming pulsed steadily. No other sounds. Were they waiting? Then, faint footsteps. Not heavy boots. Lighter. Moving away from the door down the apartment hallway. Not rushed. deliberate. Leaving, my breath escaped in a shaky gasp I didn't know I'd been holding. I waited, listening until the footsteps faded completely. Silence returned, heavy and absolute. I looked towards where Anya had been. She wasn't on the couch. I scanned the room. She wasn't there. Had she slipped out while my attention was on the door? Then I saw the closet door across the room was cracked open slightly. I could just see the whites of her eyes in the darkness. She was still shaking her head. It's not over. I lowered the poker slightly, muscles aching from the tension. I was about to whisper her name when her eyes shifted, looking past me, towards the hallway leading to the bedroom behind me. Her face contorted in utter horror, mouth opening in a silent scream. Ice flooded my veins. I spun around, raising the poker. The hallway was dark, save for the flickering TV glow. But it wasn't empty. Shapes moved there. Not one tall figure, but multiple small, skittering shadows, flowing like liquid darkness along the floor and walls, seeming to coalesce and then dissipate. They made no sound, but their movement felt anciently wrong, defying geometry. They pulsed faintly, in time with the now returning low hum. My heart seized, frozen again. They hadn't left. They had come inside. How? The shadows flowed together near the bedroom doorway, forming a vaguely man-shaped mass of roiling darkness, taller than the doorframe, impossibly thin. It didn't have a face, just a deeper patch of blackness where one should be. It tilted this non-face towards me, as if considering me. My body reacted before my mind could. A guttural yell tore from my throat as I charged forward, swinging the heavy iron poker in a wide arc. Not thinking, just pure survival instinct. The poker connected with the coalesced shadow mass. There was no solid impact, more like hitting dense, cold air. But the mass recoiled, dissolving instantly back into dozens of smaller, skittering shadows that flowed impossibly fast back down the hallway and seemed to seep under the closed bedroom door. The humming stopped. The apartment was silent again, except for my own ragged breathing. I stood there, poker raised, shaking uncontrollably. It took a long moment for my vision to clear, for the adrenaline to recede slightly. Anya emerged slowly from the closet, pale and trembling, clutching her small leather notebook to her chest. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of fear and something else. Resignation? "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You shouldn't have let them know you could see them." "What were they?" I gasped out. "Who are they?" She just shook her head, clutching the notebook tighter. "It doesn't matter now. They know about you, because you talked." She looked towards the front door. "They'll be back. For both of us." Before I could respond, she walked quickly to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the hallway without looking back. "Don't try to find me," she said softly, her back to me. "Don't ever say my name again. It's the only way they might leave you alone." Then she closed the door, leaving me alone in the silent apartment. That was the last time I ever saw her. Her number was disconnected by morning. No social media footprint. No trace. I wanted to call Mark, Sam, anyone. Tell them what happened. But Anya's final warning echoed in my ears. "Don't ever say my name again." Weeks passed in a haze of anxiety. Every shadow seemed to move. Every quiet hum felt like a prelude. I was cleaning, trying to impose order on the chaos in my head, when I found it, tucked under the couch cushion where Anya had been sitting. Her small, worn, leather-bound sketchbook. I hesitated, then opened it. Page after page of those intricate, unsettling patterns she was always drawing. Geometric, yet somehow organic, they seemed to writhe on the page. I flipped towards the end. The last few pages were different. They were filled with rapid, frantic sketches of the skittering shadows I'd seen. Dozens of them. And on the very last page, dated the morning before the incident at my apartment, was a single detailed drawing. It showed the coalesced shadow figure, tall and faceless, standing in my hallway. and beside it, a smaller figure raising a fireplace poker. She hadn't just seen them before. She'd known they were coming for me. I suppose I was born feeling like an anchor. My parents never said it outright, not like that, but the jokes landed close to home. Came out needing repairs. Dad would chuckle, though his eyes held something other than humor. Even as a baby, it was one thing after another: respiratory infections, skin that reacted to sunlight, air, seemingly existence itself, constant fevers. Mom used to sigh, watching me struggle to breathe. It's like the good Lord ran out of spare parts when he got to you, Elias. I was the frail branch on a sturdy family tree. 3 older brothers, 2 younger sisters, all bursting with the kind of rude health that thrives on hard work and mountain air. My afflictions shifted but never truly left. Childhood infections gave way to chronic asthma. Skin sensitivities became weeping eczema triggered by grass, pollen, wool, harsh soaps. Add crippling migraines from bright light, poor eyesight, and a tendency towards motion sickness, and you had me at 8 years old, a collection of symptoms wrapped in apologies. We lived deep in the Appalachian hills of West Virginia, on an old family farmstead dedicated to one thing: maple syrup. The sugar bush, as they called the vast tracts of ancient maple forest, had been in our family for generations. If you drive deep enough off the main highway, past the struggling coal towns and into the winding hollows, you'll find roads piercing through dense forests that open onto slopes thick with sugar maples. People think Vermont when they think maple syrup, but Appalachia has its own deep traditions. Father always said, before we were even a state, we had syrup. We didn't live lavishly, but the farm provided. Father had worked the sugar bush since boyhood alongside his own father, and my brothers, strong and capable, were expected to follow suit. My sisters helped mother with the house, the garden, the eventual bottling and selling. It wasn't idyllic movie stuff, tapping trees in crisp autumn air. It was demanding work, maintaining lines, checking for pests, grating sap, boiling vast quantities in the steaming sugar house, dealing with temperamental evaporators, calibrating hydrometers, filling out endless agricultural ministry forms, meeting quotas for distributors. It was chemistry, machinery, botany, and backbreaking labor, and I couldn't do most of it. I wanted to, desperately, but I couldn't haul buckets far without gasping for breath. Couldn't spend hours in the pollen-thick woods without my skin erupting. The glare from computer screens used for inventory-triggered migraines. Mom had to wash my clothes separately with special, scent-free soap. My zippers and buttons had to be plastic or coated a nickel allergy naturally, because why not? But the worst, the one that truly isolated me, was my sensitivity. Not quite an allergy, the doctor said, more like a severe intolerance to certain complex proteins. Animal dander was the primary culprit. My siblings yearned for a dog, a barn cat, anything warm and fuzzy. Impossible because of me. Visiting friends with pets meant hives and wheezing. Sometimes just being in a store where a service dog had passed through could trigger a reaction. The medication helped, somewhat, but left me drowsy and nauseated, useless for farm work or long trips. I remember one dinner vividly. My older brother, Victor, maybe 15 then, bristling with teenage resentment. I'd had a mild reaction to something in the stew. Mom and Dad debated mushrooms versus wild leeks. The windows had been open, maybe just pollen. Victor slammed his fork down. "Every single day," he yelled, his voice cracking. "Always something with him. Why do we even bother trying to keep him wrapped in cotton wool?" Mother started to scold him, but he was furious, unstoppable. "We'd be so much better off without him," he spat, glaring at me across the table. "We could travel, get a dog, not have to worry constantly. We're all stuck here because of him." He shoved his chair back violently and stormed out, pounding up the stairs to his room. His final shout echoed back down. I'd rather have a hunting dog than him for a brother. The awful part? He wasn't entirely wrong. He just ripped the bandage off the quiet, unspoken truth. I was the weak link, the burden, the reason for limitations. That night, fueled by shame and a desperate, childish urge to fix things, I went out into the woods behind the sugar house. I'd taken double my usual medication, hoping to stave off reactions, but my limbs already felt heavy, drugged. Pockets stuffed with my emergency kit, inhaler, EpiPen for unknown triggers, antihistamines. My stupid, impossible plan? Find Victor something better than a dog, something unique from the woods, something impressive enough to make him, maybe not like me, but at least stop hating me. Of course, the deep woods held mostly deer, raccoons, maybe a black bear, nothing a sickly kid could catch. But I wasn't thinking logically. I was 8, heartbroken, and desperate to stop being the problem. I pushed deeper into the sugar bush than I ever had before, past the familiar tapped trees, into the older growth where gnarled maples stood like ancient sentinels. I called out softly, pointlessly, "Here, boy, come on out," hoping for what I didn't know. A rare bird? A unique geological formation? Hours passed. Darkness gathered thick and fast under the heavy canopy. Dew soaked my jeans. I knew I should head back. Knew my parents would be frantic. Disheartened. Feeling more foolish than ever. I turned around. Then I smelled it. Faint at first, then stronger. A strange, complex scent, coppery, like struck metal, but also sweet, like overripe fruit and damp earth. It seemed to be coming from a small, dark cave mouth hidden amongst the roots of a truly colossal, ancient maple. One far larger and older than any others nearby. Curiosity, stronger than fear, pulled me closer. Inside the shallow cave, the air was cool, damp, and the source of the smell was obvious. Growing directly from a fissure in the cave floor, bathed in an eerie, faint internal luminescence, was a patch of something that looked like fungus? Moss? It was pale white, velvety in texture, pulsing with a soft, rhythmic golden light, covered an area maybe 2 feet across. As I watched, a single drop of thick, golden, shimmering liquid oozed from the center of the pulsing mass and dripped onto the cave floor. Whoa! I breathed. I'd never seen anything like it. Was this some kind of rare, bioluminescent fungus? I reached out a tentative finger, hesitated, then touched the edge of the velvety mass. It felt cool, slightly yielding, and strangely smooth, like polished wood beneath the velvet. Suddenly, a sharp, burning itch exploded on my fingertip. I snatched my hand back, yelping. A red welt was already rising where I'd touched the pulsing white mass. Allergic reaction, fast and violent. Great, just my luck. But as I backed away, cradling my stinging finger, I noticed something else. Where the golden droplet had fallen onto the damp cave floor, tiny, vibrant green shoots were already pushing up through the soil, unfurling miniature leaves at an impossible speed. Whatever this stuff was, it was potent. Dangerous to me, maybe, but undeniably alive. And maybe, just maybe, impressive enough. Ignoring my stinging finger, I found an old, discarded glass jar near the cave entrance, probably left by loggers decades ago. I carefully scraped a small clump of the white, pulsing fungus, along with some of the surrounding damp earth and one drop of the golden sap that oozed out into the jar. I screwed the lid on tight. My secret, finding me hours later, muddy and with a swollen hand, earned me a lecture mixed with worried relief from my parents and a renewed wave of simmering resentment from Victor. But I had my secret. I kept the jar hidden in the back of the old, unused spring house behind the main farmhouse, wrapped in burlap. I started observing it. The white fungus seemed to thrive in the cool dampness, slowly expanding within the jar. It continued to pulse with that faint golden light, and it kept producing tiny droplets of the golden sap. The smell inside the jar was intense, ozone, damp earth, that strange sweetness, and just opening it made my eyes water and my skin prickle. Definitely something I reacted to. I tried feeding it tiny insects I caught, They vanished into the velvety mass. Tried giving it drops of water. Tried maple sap. It seemed indifferent to everything except maybe the damp earth it came with. It just pulsed and slowly grew. My siblings, thankfully, lost interest in pets after Victor's outburst, but the tension remained. I still felt like the odd one out, the cause of restriction. Then came the idea, that smell, the one that made my skin crawl, my lungs tighten. Mom had smelled it faintly on my clothes the day I brought the jar back. "What's that lovely scent, Elias?" she'd asked. "Smells like honey and thunderstorms." Others liked the smell. What if? It was risky. I waited until the house was empty, wearing thick gloves, holding my breath. I carefully opened the jar in the well-ventilated kitchen. Using an eyedropper, I collected a few drops of the golden, shimmering sap that had pooled at the bottom. The fumes alone made my eyes water. I quickly resealed the jar. I diluted the few drops of sap in a small bottle of spring water. The water instantly took on a faint golden shimmer and that same complex, allergenic to me but pleasant to others scent. I labeled the bottle Elias's Spring Tonic, Experimental, and left it on the kitchen counter with a note. Found a recipe for an old mountain tonic. Might be good. When Dad came in for lunch, I watched from the window as he read the note, picked up the bottle, uncorked it, sniffed cautiously, then shrugged and took a small sip. He paused, took another, longer sip. Then, a slow smile spread across his face, a genuine, warm smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. He finished the bottle in 2 more gulps, then looked around the kitchen, puzzled, as if wondering where it came from but clearly pleased. He gave me a thumbs up through the window before heading back out. It worked. My routine shifted. Days became weeks. I continued my secret tending of the bloom as I started calling the fungus in my head. It grew steadily, needing larger containers, first a bigger jar, then an old ceramic pickling crock. It pulsed with light, produced the golden sap, and I, its allergic keeper, carefully harvested the sap, diluted it, bottled it, sometimes adding herbs from the garden mint, lemon balm, to mask its origin, calling it my spring tonic. I left bottles for the family. They loved it, raved about it, said it made them feel calm, centered, energetic yet peaceful. Even Victor drank it grudgingly at first, then eagerly. His hostility towards me softened, replaced by a strange, placid indifference. He stopped complaining about not having a dog. He mostly just sat on the porch, staring calmly at the trees. They started asking for more. Dad suggested it might have commercial potential. That unique flavor profile, sun, earthy, sweet, with that little tingle, market would love it. I made excuses, said the ingredients were seasonal, hard to find. I couldn't risk them finding the bloom. Felt possessive of me, and I was possessive of the strange acceptance it had bought me. The bloom itself seemed aware. When I brought it offerings, rich soil from the woods, spring water, even small amounts of maple syrup, it seemed to pulse brighter. When I talked to it, telling it about my day, my frustrations, the pulsing seemed to synchronize with my voice. Couldn't tap like Malou, but it communicated in its own way. Especially its hunger seemed to need more, bigger container, richer soil, more potent offerings. The family was changing too, subtly at first. Their skin took on a faint golden undertone, smooth and poreless. Their eyes seemed calmer, less prone to blinking, reflecting the light with a faint golden sheen. They moved slower, more deliberately. Their voices became softer, melodic monotones, sometimes finishing each other's sentences. They spent more time together, often just sitting in comfortable silence, facing the woods where the bloom originated. They were still my family, but becoming less distinct, more harmonious, eerily so. Dad had the idea for the cider. "Just a touch, Elias," he'd said, his eyes glowing faintly gold in the lamplight. Dilute the final fermentation. Give it that unique essence, that feeling of mother's kiss. He'd started calling the tonics effect that, a phrase that simultaneously warmed and chilled me. I resisted, felt like a dangerous escalation. But Dad, usually so respectful of my secret recipe, was insistent this time, gentle but implacable. The others agreed, their voices soft, unanimous. Yes, Elias, the cider needs the bloom's kiss. Reluctantly, I provided a heavily diluted batch of sap water. I couldn't bear to be in the sugar house during the final blending. The fumes from the sap mixed with fermenting apples were overwhelming for me. Dad and my brothers handled it. The first trial batch of Heartwood cider, Dad's name, was transformative, not just successful. People who tried it described a profound sense of peace, connection, euphoria. Demand exploded. Our small farm operation couldn't keep up. The national distributors Dad contacted after tasting it were offering contracts beyond his wildest dreams. But the source was limited. The bloom grew slowly in its crock. It needed more space, more sustenance. Victor, despite his newfound placidity, retained a sliver of his old resentment. He started snooping around, trying to find the source of my tonic, my secret ingredient for the cider. One afternoon, I was returning from the spring house after tending the bloom when I saw Victor near the cave in the old-growth woods. He hadn't found the entrance yet, but he was close. "What are you hiding, Elias?" he asked, his voice soft but with an edge. "What makes your cider so special?" He kicked at the roots near the hidden cave mouth. Before I could react, before the bloom could somehow intervene through Victor himself this time, Dad appeared silently behind him. Dad placed a calm hand on Victor's shoulder. Victor froze. Dad leaned in and whispered something in Victor's ear. I couldn't hear the words, but Victor's eyes glazed over, the golden sheen intensifying. He nodded slowly, turned, and walked placidly back towards the farmhouse without another word. Dad looked at me, his eyes ancient and calm. "He understands now, Elias. We all serve the Heartwood, protect the source." I felt like the king of the hill momentarily. Victor was subdued. My family, the town, distributors, they all needed me. The only one who could safely handle the bloom, harvest the sap. I had control, or so I thought. The bloom needed a larger vessel. Dad and the now placid workers constructed a huge stainless steel tank in the oldest, deepest part of the cellar beneath the farmhouse, accessible only by a narrow stone staircase. We moved the bloom there carefully, giving it space, darkness, nutrient-rich soil from the cave. It seemed to thrive, pulsing with a stronger golden light, producing more sap. The cider production scaled up. Heartwood cider became a national phenomenon. Money poured in. The farm expanded, but the town hollowed out. People still lived there, worked the expanded orchards and bottling plant, but they were quieter, slower, their eyes holding that same golden sheen, their thoughts seemingly shared. They moved with an eerie synchronicity, tending the orchards that now grew unnaturally lush around the farmhouse. I became the bloom's keeper in earnest. Only I could enter the cellar, tend the fungus, harvest the sap under its pulsing golden light. The fumes were intense, burning my lungs even through a respirator, raising welts on my gloved hands. But the bloom seemed to recognize me, pulsed gently when I spoke to it, felt ancient and vast. Its influence spread through the cider, through the land, through the people. One night, unable to sleep, I went down to the cellar. The bloom pulsed softly, filling the vast space with golden light. It had grown considerably, now resembling a large, intricately patterned, living tapestry covering most of the cellar floor. As I watched, it seemed to communicate, not with words, but with feelings, images pressed directly into my mind. Hunger, expansion, need, and a sense of profound, ancient loneliness, reaching out, connecting, absorbing. It showed me images, the roots spreading under the orchards, touching the town's water table. The consciousness spreading through everyone who drank the cider, linking them, calming them, making them part of its network, making them content, safe, unburdened by individuality. It showed me the stranger they brought last fall, a hiker who wandered too close to the cave. Showed them leading him, placid from the cider, down to the cellar, gently pressing him into the pulsing fungal mass until he dissolved, becoming part of the bloom's sustenance. No violence, just absorption, recycling. It showed me my family, gathered silently in the living room above, their golden eyes all turned towards the cellar door, feeling its presence, connected to its thoughts, happy, peaceful, integrated. And it showed me myself, the outsider, the anchor, the one whose flaws, the allergies, the sensitivities prevented full integration, making me the necessary interface between the bloom and the world it was slowly, patiently consuming. My sickness was my shield, but also my prison. It leaned its awareness towards me, a feeling like a cold, golden kiss against my mind. It didn't need fangs or claws. Its touch was acceptance, belonging, an end to being the burden. It showed me the peace of joining the collective, of letting go. Friend, the thought resonated, not in my mother's voice or father's, but in a chorus of all the voices it had touched, woven together. Best friend, join us, be whole. I recoiled, stumbling back up the stone stairs, gasping for untainted air. The cellar door slammed shut behind me seemingly on its own. That was months ago. I live here still on the farm, comfortably, funded by the Heartwood Maple Company. They changed the name, more marketable. Jesse Victor, manages the distribution logistics, his movements calm and efficient, eyes serene. My parents oversee the orchards, moving with the seasons, faces smooth and placid. They are all kind to me, attentive, loving in their way. They ensure I have everything I need, except freedom. I am the keeper, the only one who can handle the raw sap, who understands the bloom's needs on some level. The only one truly still, myself. My allergies protect me from the final absorption, the loss of self. But that protection is fraying. Lately, the smell of the bloom on the wind doesn't make my lungs tighten quite as much. Last week, I touched a drop of the diluted cider accidentally, and the welt that rose on my skin was smaller, faded faster. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I think I see a faint golden sheen starting to appear in my own eyes, deep behind the worried reflection. My immunity, my otherness, the very thing that made me a burden, is perhaps fading, or adapting. Maybe the bloom is patient. Maybe, eventually, even its keeper finds harmony. Maybe, eventually, I won't be allergic anymore. And maybe, when that happens, I'll finally understand what my father meant when he gargled, "Best friend." Maybe I'll finally feel that mother's kiss. The thought fills me with a dread colder than any cellar. I was returning with the herbal tea my client, Arthur, had requested when he erupted from the therapy room, colliding with me hard enough to send ripples through the steaming mug. By some miracle, I managed to keep the tea from spilling, stumbling back against the corridor wall. He didn't even register my presence, charging headlong toward the main exit of the practice suite. Blast it, chaos like this always seemed to happen when my part-time receptionist wasn't here to act as a buffer. I quickly set the mug down on a small console table and hurried after him. "Arthur," I called out his assumed name. He radiated a palpable fury, a dark energy so thick I could almost imagine it swirling off his shoulders like heat haze. He wrenched the heavy frosted glass door of the suite open and bolted out into the building's main hallway. I gave chase, reaching the elevator bank just as the polished steel doors slid shut in my face. The indicator light showed the car descending rapidly. I briefly considered the stairwell 9 flights down, but knew I'd never catch him. Defeated, I turned back towards the suite, my mind already racing. I needed to get to my office, call his emergency contact, his sister. I recalled, try to ensure he didn't harm himself or others. I pushed open my office door and stopped cold. Arthur was sitting calmly in the client chair opposite my desk. He looked serene, composed, with absolutely no sign of the volcanic rage he'd been projecting just moments before. What? How? I stared, utterly bewildered. From the Arthur in the chair to the empty doorway he or an Arthur had just stormed through. Do you have a twin brother? The question sounded absurd even as I asked it, grasping at any logical straw. I hadn't seen anyone else come into the office, but perhaps while I was in the kitchenette preparing the tea. No, that wasn't... Arthur paused, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He let out a long, slow breath. I think perhaps you should sit down, he said quietly. Did he think this was some kind of movie? Wasn't that the line reserved for police officers delivering tragic news? Still, my legs felt unsteady. I sank into my desk chair. You recall our discussion about parts? He asked. I nodded cautiously. We had been exploring internal family systems concepts, discussing the different facets or subpersonalities that make up a whole self, protective parts, wounded child parts, critical parts, angry parts, standard therapeutic models. Well, I mentioned I have a part that's intensely angry, aggressive. Sometimes it just takes the wheel and I black out or lose control, he continued. I nodded again, and we discussed trying to understand that part, have a dialogue with it, learn its function, its fears. My voice trailed off. What about it? Well, while you were getting the tea, I spoke to it, directly. I told that angry part of me it wasn't welcome anymore, that it had to leave. My professional training screamed internally. That wasn't the therapeutic goal at all. Integration, understanding, harmony, not banishment. But his statement hung in the air, heavy with implication. That wasn't the immediate issue. Okay, and I prompted, a cold premonition dawning. And so it left, Arthur stated simply. That was him, the one who stormed out. So, a part of you physically manifested, took on a solid form, and left the room. Is that what you're telling me? My voice was barely a whisper. Arthur nodded, a strange mix of relief and trepidation on his face. My stomach plummeted. He was either experiencing a profound psychotic break, orchestrating an elaborate, cruel prank, or I was losing my own grip on reality. Or both of us were. I saw someone identical to him leave, yet here he sat. Arthur, look, I know we're still in spring, but if this is some kind of elaborate practical joke, it's not, Arthur interrupted, his voice sharp. When you talked about parts, about facets of the self, I assumed you understood. Understood what? My situation. That for me, it's not just a metaphor. That my parts, sometimes they become separate. Physically, I bit down hard on my lower lip, tasting blood. My hand hovered near the discreet emergency alert button under my desk. I looked him straight in the eyes, searching for any sign of deceit, but saw only earnest, unwavering conviction. A cold sweat began to prickle the back of my neck. Arthur, the parts concept in therapy. It's a way to understand the complexity of the human mind, the different roles and beliefs we hold within ourselves. It acknowledges our multifaceted nature. I truly did not mean distinct, separate physical entities. But for me, he insisted, his voice quiet but firm, that's exactly what it is. If what you're saying is true, my voice faltered. It is. The frustration flared briefly in his eyes. Watch. He took a breath. Hey, Gloom, he said, addressing the air. Gloom was the name he used for his deeply depressive aspect. Gloom, could you come out for a second? Please, just show her. She needs to see. She has to believe me. Silence filled the room. Nothing happened. A wave of awkward pity washed over me. mixed with profound unease. I forced a gentle, professional smile. Arthur? Is really okay. Sometimes stress can manifest in unusual dash. Quiet, he's coming, Arthur snapped, his eyes fixed on a point just beside himself. I held back a sigh. This was clearly a delusion, perhaps stress-induced. Then I blinked, rubbed my eyes vigorously, blinked again. Arthur seemed to be blurring at the edges, shimmering. Then, horrifyingly, his form began to split, like a cell undergoing mitosis, but impossibly, grotesquely physical. For a heart-stopping, nauseating moment, he looked like some nightmarish conjoined twin two heads, for arms, fused at the torso, sharing one set of legs. Bile rose in my throat. Then, somehow, a second pair of legs peeled away from the first, stepping sideways. What on earth? I gasped, stumbling back in my chair, violating my own professional composure entirely. I stared, dumbfounded, at the two identical men now standing where one had been moments before. The second Arthur, the one who had just emerged, was a perfect physical copy, yet his entire being radiated misery. His shoulders slumped, his features sagged, his eyes were downcast and hollow. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world, about to crumble under it. "Okay, come back now," Arthur once said, his voice strained, directed at Arthur too. Gloom. Gloom looked at the floor for a long moment, then, with an air of infinite weariness, slowly lifted one foot, then the other, and seemed to emerge back into Arthur one. The transition was fluid yet fundamentally wrong, like watching film run in reverse, leaving one Arthur standing there, looking drained. I sank back into my seat, limp. Good grief. What is happening? "I've been like this my whole life," Arthur said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Different parts of me. Sometimes they take over this body," he gestured to himself, "and I lose time, lose control. Other times, they just step out, live their own lives for a bit, do whatever they want." He exhaled slowly. "It's exhausting and terrifying. It's such a relief to finally tell someone who might understand the framework, even if not the physicality. So, right, my brain felt like scrambled eggs. I wanted to run. I wanted to wake up. I tried desperately to rationalize, to find a psychiatric label, a neurological explanation. Nothing fit what I had just witnessed. Yet, stranger things had happened. The edges of reality sometimes felt thinner than people like to admit. So you have aspects, entities, that can physically leave your body and return. How does that work? Conservation of mass? Where does the extra material come from? Does your consciousness split? Or, no idea, Arthur cut me off. Never wanted to find out. Sounds like a one-way ticket to a government lab. His brow furrowed, and suddenly his expression shifted. A cold, calculating smirk twisted his lips, instantly recognizable as entirely different from the Arthur I knew, or the miserable gloom. "And if you ever breathe a word of this to anyone, Doctor, I'll ensure you regret it. Permanently." My eyes widened, my breath hitched. I instinctively started to rise, ready to bolt. Just as quickly, Arthur's face softened back into its usual worried lines. "Sorry." "Oh heavens, I'm so sorry. That wasn't me. That was Malachi." Malachi, the name Arthur used for the part he described as cold, calculating, and terrifyingly homicidal. The part that made meticulous plans. Hearing about such a part metaphorically was one thing. Realizing it was a distinct entity that could potentially stand before me, physically separate, holding a weapon, that was another thing entirely. Maybe tell Malachi that, well, client confidentiality is paramount, naturally, but direct threats might complicate that, legally and ethically speaking. My voice trembled slightly. Arthur's expression contorted again. For a stomach-churning second, a second face seemed to push outwards from the side of his head, like something trying to tear its way free. One face wore the cold smirk of Malachi, the other was Arthur's, twisted in fear and effort. Arthur shut his eyes, gritting his teeth. With a sound like wet cloth ripping, the second face retracted, sucked back in. Arthur gasped, sweating. "I'm sorry," he panted. "He's strong sometimes. I'll try to keep him contained." Nausea threatened to overwhelm me. I swallowed hard. I should have ended the session, referred him out, called someone, but I felt trapped, both by professional obligation and a rising tide of surreal fear. Why did this always happen to me? You can't hurt her," Arthur suddenly hissed, seemingly arguing with himself or with Malachi. I closed my eyes, a wave of profound weariness washing over me. Fear morphed into a heavy, dull resignation. I opened my eyes, took a slow breath, and calmly sat forward again, folding my hands on the desk. My breaking point had been reached and passed. Something inside just shut down. "I see," I said, my voice flat. "So, the first one, Fury, the angry one who stormed out. We need to get him back, correct?" I asked, shifting into problem-solving mode, however absurd the problem. "Have they escaped like that before? Left entirely?" "No, I've never told one to leave before," Arthur clarified. "They've emerged, at bad times. Usually, they're smart enough not to do it with witnesses, and definitely never in front of more than one person, let alone charging out into public like that. So, others have seen this. A few, ex-girlfriends mostly. They usually convinced themselves they were hallucinating or that I was playing tricks, especially when I denied everything afterwards." "Ah, right. Okay. Well, okay then." My mind felt like it was grinding gears. "We have to find Fury," Arthur said, his voice regaining some urgency. Fury was the name for the angry part. "We?" I wanted to ask, but bit my tongue. "Yes, we need to get him back. And then, perhaps focus on integration, helping all parts coexist, understand each other's roles, not banishing them. So you don't have entities physically jumping out of you." Arthur frowned deeply. "But I came here to get rid of them. Malachi, gloom, fury. I don't want to be murderous or depressive or constantly angry. I just want peace." "That's not really how it works," I said, my therapist persona momentarily resurfacing, albeit warped by the bizarre circumstances. "Those parts exist for a reason, often protective, even if their methods are extreme. Banishment isn't integration. Healthy function involves harmony, understanding." I trailed off, realizing how insane this sounded now. Look, even Malachi, many people have dark impulses. It's about managing them, keeping them in check with other, healthier parts. Arthur looked ready to argue. Then his eyes suddenly lit up with an idea. "I know where Fury might go." He grabbed his phone, fingers flying across the screen. "There's this place downtown, an axe-throwing bar. He loves breaking things when he's raging. It's his go-to cool-down spot." "Right?" I said slowly. "And if you walk in there, while he's also there, won't people notice there are two of you?" "Twins," Arthur said instantly, echoing my earlier desperate guess. "Obviously. And if Gloom or Malachi decides to pop out too, triplets." A wide grin spread across Arthur's face. He seemed to be finding this situation far more novel than terrifying now. I did not share the sentiment. "Please," he added, the grin fading into a pleading look, "help me get him back. I don't know what he'll do out there on his own." I considered my options. Terminate therapy. Recommend institutionalization. Call the police and say what? Go home, lock the doors, and drink heavily. I sighed, defeated by the sheer absurdity. My hourly rate applies to retrieval missions. A condensed summary of the retrieval. The trip to the axe-throwing bar was surreal. We found Fury venting his rage spectacularly on a wooden target. Explaining the situation involved a convoluted lie about a family emergency and identical twin psychologists. There was shouting from Fury, pleading from Arthur, and eventually, a reluctant, sullen merging back into one body in the bar's restroom, much to my profound discomfort. I genuinely, foolishly, thought that might be the peak of the weirdness, that maybe, somehow, we could now work towards a bizarre form of therapy acknowledging the physical manifestations. I was wrong. The next morning, Arthur showed up at my office unannounced, hours before his scheduled appointment for the following week. His face was ashen. "He's gone," Arthur whispered, collapsing into the client chair. "Who?" I asked, dread coiling tight in my stomach. "Not Fury again?" No, Arthur looked up, his eyes filled with terror. "Malachi, of course, the calculating, murderous one. Of course he would be the one to truly leave. Why? What happened?" He said he was tired of being contained, tired of my weakness. He wanted his own life, his own experiences. Arthur's voice broke. He said he needed freedom to act on his plans. He doesn't want integration. He doesn't want harmony. He just wants release. He shut his eyes tightly. "I think he's going to kill someone." "And why didn't he start with you?" I asked, the question blunt but necessary. Arthur shrugged helplessly. Maybe he thinks if I die, he disappears too? Some kind of tether? I don't know. Okay. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken fear. Any idea who his first target might be? Arthur met my gaze, his expression bleak. "You, a freaking course. Why wouldn't it be? But I haven't done anything to him," I protested, professionalism completely abandoned now. "Can I just withdraw from care? Does that make me less of a target?" This was so far beyond my training, beyond anything rational. Arthur gave a sad, tired smile. "I truly wish it were that simple." A chill deeper than any I'd felt before traced its way down my spine. "You know something about his plans?" "For me, he's meticulous," Arthur whispered. I can sometimes feel echoes of his thoughts, see fragments. He doesn't just plan one way. He plans contingencies, dozens of them, for you. For others, he's fixated on over the years. "I'm calling the police," I stated, reaching for my phone. "And tell them what?" Arthur countered, his voice flat. "That my imaginary evil twin who can physically manifest is going to kill you? They'll commit me. Malachi will still be out there, and he'll know you tried." He was right. It was insane. I felt trapped. How could I possibly explain this? "I need to leave," I said decisively. "Get out of the country. Go somewhere he can't follow." Arthur's eyes lit up, mirroring my own desperate hope. That could work. My passport is at home. He doesn't have one. He wouldn't be able to leave legally. Right? Relief, sharp and giddy, flooded me. A simple solution. A drastic one, but simple. Avoidance. And maybe a long vacation while doing it. Okay, I'm booking a flight. Somewhere remote. Somewhere he'd hate. He dislikes humidity and anywhere without reliable Wi-Fi, Arthur offered helpfully. "Good to know. Okay, I'm not telling you where, just in case Malachi is listening in somehow." "Understood," Arthur nodded. He hesitated at the door. "I am truly sorry you're caught in this. I'll keep trying to find him, to convince him to come back, so you can return safely." "Sure," I murmured, already scrolling through flight options on my laptop, my mind racing. Get away, far away. 2 months later. 2 months. 2 months spent trekking through misty mountains in a remote corner of the world, deliberately offline, deliberately unreachable. It had been strangely peaceful, despite the underlying fear. The call came via a satellite phone I'd reluctantly kept for emergencies. It was Arthur. "He's back." Arthur's voice crackled with static and relief. "Malachi, he came back. Weeks ago. He realized he couldn't survive long-term without the main body, I think. We've reached an understanding. A truce. It's safe now. You can come home. Relief warred with deep suspicion. Could Malachi truly be contained? Could Arthur be trusted? But I was running out of money, and the solitude was starting to wear thin. Cautiously, I booked my flights home. Present day. I landed yesterday, unpacked this morning. The familiar surroundings of my apartment felt both comforting and alien after my abrupt departure. Work emails were piling up. Clients needed rescheduling. Life had to resume, even if it felt like walking back into a minefield. I was trying to mentally prepare for the inevitable first session back with Arthur when the doorbell rang. Sharp, insistent. My heart leaped. Too soon. Way too soon. I wasn't expecting anyone. Pizza, maybe? I hadn't ordered any. I crept to the peephole. It was Arthur, standing on my doorstep, rocking slightly on his heels. But something was wrong. His eyes seemed flat, glassy, and he was wearing a smile. A wide, fixed, unnatural smile that didn't reach his eyes. It looked plastered on, hollow. I didn't open the door. Arthur? What are you doing here? I just got back. Wanted to welcome you home. His voice came through the door, slightly distorted, lacking its usual anxious cadence. Smooth. And I have something important to share. Couldn't wait for office hours. My blood ran cold. I never gave clients my home address. Not ever. How did he find me? How did you get my address, Arthur? I kept my voice steady, betraying none of the panic clawing at my insides. The hollow smile outside the peephole seemed to widen. Malachi is very resourceful. It wasn't Arthur. It was Malachi wearing Arthur's face. Had he been free this whole time? Had Arthur lied? Or was Arthur gone? He wasn't calling out anymore, just standing there, waiting, smiling that empty, terrifying smile. I backed away from the door, heart pounding. I needed to call the police. Now, just as I reached for my phone on the kitchen counter, it buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Check on Chloe and Megan and your parents. Addresses attached. Puffy needs his walk soon, doesn't he? Decisions, doctor. Make the call. See what happens. My breath hitched. He knew their names. He knew their addresses. He knew my dog walker's schedule. He was watching them. Right now. How? Don't open the door, I muttered to myself, grabbing the heaviest kitchen knife from the block, my hand shaking. He couldn't get in if I didn't open it. But he didn't need to get in here, did he? Not if he could reach them. What do you want? I yelled through the door, stalling, trying to think. Integration, the voice replied, smooth and mocking. You wanted harmony, doctor. All parts living together. Malachi just thinks some parts are more essential than others, like him, and maybe you. Could I warn them without him knowing? Could I call the police without triggering something terrible? He seemed to anticipate my every thought. I backed into my bedroom, locking the door, then the adjoining bathroom, locking that too. Trapped. I needed a plan, but all I could think about were the faces of my loved ones. Oblivious. While this thing wearing my client's face stood outside my door, holding their lives in his hands. My phone felt impossibly heavy. Which call do I make first?